All right, I'm pressing the live button. Live button has been pressed. So I think we're live already. Yep. Pretty sure. Those in the chat, let me know if everything is looking and sounding okay. Let me check if over here it sounds... According to this, everything should be fine. But let me know in the chat if everything is looking and sounding fine, guys. So, welcome. This is the Andres Restart podcast. I am Andres Restart. And this week I am joined by two people. I got my co-host Brandon from What About Nintendo, and I got our good friend Cameron from GameBird Classic joining again as well. Both their channels are linked in the description below. How are you guys doing tonight?
I'm doing awesome, man. Thanks for having me on again.
For sure, man. It's always fun having you on. The both of you. I always enjoy talking to you guys. You guys are my friends, and we get each other. So, and I think that's pretty important.
That's connection.
Yeah.
It's very deep. Very deep.
Cool. So I'm just looking at the chat here. I see you guys are telling me that everything is sounding good. Cool. Darian Jackson, you were just listening to Aquatic Ambience. In other words, you are a person of culture. Very nice. But I'll just give a few shout outs to the chat here. DE Fox, Skipbit Production, hello. Birdman, what's up? 8UJ, I will sell my soul for Breath of the Wild 2 coming out holiday season 2021. We don't have confirmation yet, but I think you're going to like some of the takes in this podcast at least, but, you know, we'll see. Let's see here. Javi Sauri Munoz, hello there. Cody Bell, Giancarlo, leave my name out. Oh, I'm sorry, but hello. Paul Dune, hello there. Rescue Squad, what is up?
Public, my friend.
Momia Malvada, you just found the channel a few days ago. Welcome. Hope you enjoy the show. So, guys watching, if you could leave a like, spread the good word, share it to others, that'd be greatly appreciated. But for those who are unsure of what we're doing here, this is a Nintendo podcast. We try to do every Sunday night around 9 p.m. Eastern, depending on how distracted I get with other things in life. It may happen slightly later, like 9:05 or 9:10. But we try to stick to that little time period there. But for this week, we're going to be discussing a lot of rumors and leaks. Now, I do want to clarify, and I feel like maybe with the videos I made this week, I didn't have as much of a disclaimer. I think I made myself clear, but sometimes I try to be extra careful about, you know, cautioning people to like overhype and such. But I think part of it just comes with the confidence in what I think is going to happen. But I just want to stress that the rumors that we're talking about, until anything is confirmed by Nintendo, take it with a grain of salt. We don't know what's actually going to happen necessarily, even if it's like real and we are being fed this actual information from like Nintendo's marketing team or what have you. Until it's actually officially announced, something could happen, right? So we have to take it with a grain of salt regardless. But anyway, there are rumors and leaks abound that I think are coming from pretty credible sources. So firstly, we're going to be talking about, maybe not firstly, but at some point, we're going to be talking about Zelda, okay? And that's going to include the likes of Ocarina of Time and Breath of the Wild 2. We're also going to be getting into Donkey Kong as well. We talked about Zelda and Donkey Kong throughout the week. We got a lot of information and discussions from Samus Hunter, someone who seems to be a fairly, or not just fairly, like incredibly credible leaker on Twitter that I've actually engaged in discussions with and stuff. And, you know, they've been shouting me out and things. It's been kind of a nice little relationship we sort of set up there. A very cool little like Twitter channel I think I should follow, especially if you're into like leaks and rumors and such. So check that out. But so we're going to be talking about those things. But we're also going to be getting into a report that came out. I don't know. I saw it today. It may have happened yesterday, May 2nd. Today's May 2nd, so today, from Nikkei, that there will be, apparently Nintendo's going to try and produce or manufacture 30 million Switch units, which I believe, I know, it is a record. It will be a record amount of Switches in a single year, and those 30 million Switches apparently include a more powerful revision. So we're going to be talking about all of that today. I think we're going to probably start things off with a little bit of discussion on Pokemon Snap. I haven't gotten that much time to play with it, but we'll touch on that for a little bit. And we're also going to tie in the news of the Monolith Soft tires, but that's going to kind of go into the whole Zelda discussion of things here. But that's the general plan. That's not necessarily the specific order, but that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. So, yeah, that's the plan. What do you guys think?
Sounds good.
I think that plan sounds amazing.
Cool. So let me check in with the chat here real quick, and then we'll talk about Pokemon Snap for a bit, and then we'll jump into the main topics. Super Chris, our neighborhood-friendly mod, says, Rule 1, don't be a jackass. That is correct. That is rule number 1. Do not be a jackass. If you are not a jackass, then you will probably be entirely fine in the chat. Jean-Carl added me. I beat Magnamalo this week. Did you now? Ooh, nice. Yeah. A few days ago, I think I was playing with Brandon. Yeah, Brandon, you and I were playing a few days ago, and I was helping Brandon catch up a little bit, and I shared a little clip on Twitter of I put together like this combo to slay. I forget the name of it. The water frog turtle thing, platypus moss monster. That you know what it is. Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's called Tetranodon. And I was able to put together, I want to say, 856 damage within like a 7 or 8 second span of a combo. It was a single combo with the greatsword, which for me was like a whole other level of power. Because when you first start
That's awesome.
game, like you take a long time to just charge one single attack, and maybe you break 100, and you're like, oh man, I just broke 100. I'm cool. I just broke 800 easy in seconds. So yeah, I was pretty impressed with that. I impressed myself with it. It was exciting. But anyway, I love Monster Hunter. It's a really good game.
Heck yeah.
We did get that update this week, by the way. So there's some cool things that were added. A few Apex monsters. They're continually offering updates. There's another update coming at the end of May. And another little thing I'll point out, this update for Monster Hunter was also one of the things that was suggested to us by Samus Hunter on Twitter before it was actually announced, just kind of furthering the credibility of this leaker here. But yeah, Monster Hunter is awesome. Let's see here. ASAP Rel, hello, how are you? Giancarlo, what Ocarina of Time, original or 3DS remake? Well, according to the rumor, and this is coming from Game Over Jesse, who has pretty much like an exclusive Zelda channel for the most part, and apparently they have a lot of different sources and such, and I mean, they're dedicated to Zelda, so they're pretty good about what they do with in terms of Zelda reporting, and according to the rumor that they've heard, and it's a rumor, I'm not saying it's like a super credible rumor, they're not even necessarily saying it's a super credible rumor either, just something they've heard. We'll get into it in a little bit, but apparently it's not related to the 3DS version, at least in terms of titling. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but in terms of titling, it doesn't have 3D in it, apparently. Ronnie Fazio, I'm always amazed at how Capcom is able to work with Nintendo hardware. Resident Evil 4 on the GameCube, Monster Hunter Rise on the Switch. I've also been playing Re4, and it's fantastic. Resident Evil 4, I think... it's one of my favorite games of all time. I pretty much always put it in my top 5. Obviously, as more and more games come out throughout time, that list becomes even tougher, but it's easily like one of the best GameCube games. I think I would put it in the top 3 for sure of my favorite GameCube games. Metroid Prime and Resident Evil 4 are there. Maybe Wind Waker would fill out that top 3.
Wind Waker's definitely in my top 3.
Well, I mean, I really enjoyed Twilight Princess. That made me cry at the time, but I don't think it's aged as well as Wind Waker. That's kind of the thing. Like, my initial experience with Twilight Princess, I would say, was top tier. It's just
that first playthrough of Twilight Princess is like 10 out of 10.
Yeah,
so good.
It was epic.
I mean, all these games are 10 out of 10s. They're all masterpieces. So it's kind of like, you know. It's funny, like, if you guys like watch sports or like sports analysts debate who's the greatest basketball player of all time, like when you're talking about the greats of greats, like you have to really be very, very picky about little things because all of these players are the best of their times, right? And when we're talking about games like Resident Evil 4, Metroid Prime, we're talking about the best of their time. Like, you have to really be very picky in terms of coming up with a top list, right? But anyway, Resident Evil 4, amazing game.
That's so good.
Yeah, I would say Capcom might be my favorite publisher outside of Nintendo. Mainly because of Resident Evil and Monster Hunter. Ice Sonic added me. I think this Switch Pro is sounding more next gen. Do you think it's next gen? I'm not ready to switch to it as of right now.
No, it's not next gen. It's
Yeah,
just not gonna be.
Yeah, I don't think the Switch Pro is Switch 2 or the next iteration of Nintendo home console or hybrid console.
There's been no
and
information
why is that
that's come
exactly?
out that has suggested that.
Just because I think Nintendo's reiterated numerous times that they see the Switch family life cycle being longer than traditional home console hardware, and they've kind of stuck to that 7 to 10 year number. I think 10 years is probably pushing it. I see more maybe the 7 to 8 year lifespan. But I think in order to do that, they need to do kind of a hardware boost, kind of refine an already winning formula. But I don't think it's in their benefit, especially with how well the Switch is selling, to kind of just jump to the next thing.
Right. Yeah.
Usually before a new console comes out, like even before it's announced, we know that a new console, like a new generation is coming. Like we know that there's going to be an announcement for it. Like the Switch, we knew that there was the NX. Like we knew that there was another system coming. For all like the next gen, like PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X, we knew that those were coming way before they were actually revealed. Like we usually know that a system's coming before it's revealed. They usually tell their investors things like that, and they tell their fans things like that. So for them to just be like, come out and be like, a new next-gen system coming this holiday, we just announced and never told you before was even a thing at all, would be insane. Like, it was crazy when we got the reveal for Switch so close to the announcement, but we had known about the NX at that time for a long time before. So we knew to save up for some sort of next-gen console.
Fantastic point, because
we didn't know what it was.
I was thinking about that. Like, I'm glad you reminded me about the NX. Like, yeah, so we knew about this code name for Nintendo's next system for a long while. Yeah. I want to say at least about a year, around a year, if not more. But then we go back to before the Wii U, it was Project Cafe, and then we go to the Wii, it was Nintendo Revolution. These things were things that were officially shipped by Nintendo.
Was Dolphin.
Dolphin, exactly.
Yeah, I forget what
I think it was Ultra 64 or something like that. Something along those lines. But point is, there's a long-standing history, at least with home consoles, for there to be code names. I'm pretty sure they have for the handhelds as well, but I guess we just don't talk about that as much. But yeah, it's
been a lot less of them.
I think you both bring up great points. Brandon, your point that it's pretty clear when a next generation system is coming, because even the company itself has shown, especially with Nintendo, specifically with Nintendo, I should say, that they've had code names leading up to before that release, that we know about that. And then to your point, Cameron, in terms of sales, like you look at sales, the Switch just had its best-selling year, and now we're seeing a report from Nikkei that they're going to hit 30 million. That's going to be an incredible thing. Maybe they don't actually do it. That's their goal, potentially. I think it's remarkable, especially considering all of the semiconductor shortage issues, but we'll get into that shortly. Just to kind of go back to your question, iSonic, we don't think it's going to be next gen. Their designs are not supporting that at all. I think once Switch sales start to dip a little bit, maybe then we can start talking about it. But even then, at that point, Nintendo might have a price drop. They haven't even had a price drop yet. Like, I think we are a ways off. 2 to 3 years, I would say.
Definitely. And make no mistake, like, Nintendo is definitely working on the Switch successor. The research and development. They're always working on the next hardware. As soon as they launch a new console, they're working on the next one. So make no mistake, that's definitely happening. We're just not going to be seeing it or hearing about it anytime soon.
For sure. And actually, just let me clarify: 2.5 to 3.5 years. Like I think the earliest we see a next gen Switch is not holiday 2023, but holiday 2023. I think is the earliest we see a next gen Switch, but I think we could conceivably see it as late as holiday 2024. Conceivably, I'm not sure, because that base Switch will lag behind quite a bit. But
true.
Yeah,
I agree with that 100%. Yeah, I think that sounds perfect.
Yeah,
actually.
But let's just continue on the chat here, and then we'll start jumping to the topics. Because like as we're sort of talking about the different questions people have here in the chat, like there's different things I know I want to talk about during the podcast, and I'm like, oh, I'll save that for later. I'll save that for later. But this is gonna be a good one, guys. That's all I'm gonna say for now. This is gonna be a good one.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. Paul Dunn added me. So Samus Hunter said we will get Zelda news before E3. How soon do you think it will come if it's true? He actually, or she, tweeted out, I think today, to expect kind of Zelda news throughout the month of May. And we had a video talking about potential Zelda news in May last week. And my basic thinking after I put out what's interesting is I put out videos, like I have ideas and I kind of bounce them around, but after the video, I put out the video and kind of think about it, and then I see the chat, my ideas sort of evolve. And I think
for sure
what's the most realistic expectation, or rather the safest expectation, is Age of Calamity news. Age of Calamity DLC news this month. Why? Because we literally know like that there's going to be bonus content coming out in May. It's like, there you go. Like, we already know that it's coming, so that's why. But they may update us on the future of the DLC. Like, for example, the actual first pack is coming out in June. So that's a possibility that we see that in May. I've thought that maybe we get like a shadow drop during E3 Direct in June, but conceivably we see it a little bit earlier. And then, of course, Nintendo's going to announce their E3 plans this month. And that alone, I would argue, is news. They may get it's going to be very telling in terms of what that may be. They may say, oh, we're going to have a Zelda anniversary special direct, or it's going to be a Breath of the Wild 2 focused direct, or it may be a combination of things. Like that alone is going to be information, and there may be a teaser thrown in there. Nintendo may drop a trailer or of some sort leading up to E3, maybe. If you consider this as a possibility. And this is kind of like a unique situation. I mean, because this isn't a fully digital E3. Nintendo said that they're looking forward to kind of giving us a very special event, right? Like they're going to kind of rethink how they deliver that information. And I'm just throwing this idea out there, but what if some of the things that Samus Hunter is alluding to goes beyond Age of Calamity? What if there's like some sort of like very subtle Breath of the Wild 2 teaser to excite us and hype us up leading into E3? Nothing major like a full-blown trailer, but maybe like a 5-second clip or something, like something like that. I don't think is out of the question, is my point. Just because it could be kind of like trying to invite us into this digital world. Because think back to E3 2016. That Breath of the Wild sort of event, like it was this whole thing. I didn't get to go. I wish I could have gone, but like there was this. It was basically a theme park for Breath of the Wild. And we can't do that now because of, social distancing. But Nintendo may want to try and find a way to sort of simulate that to some degree in a digital sense. They may create a customized website where we can sort of explore around and see different things to sort of hype us up for E3. And it may be entirely Breath of the Wild 2 sort of focused, and maybe they want to kind of tease us with that, and maybe they open that up in the middle of May, and we kind of wait. There's some little tidbits that we can sort of analyze, and maybe hinting at something we'll extrapolate, make 1,000 theories for, and be wrong about most of them. But, it'll all just be to sort of hype up the event. Like, I think something like that is conceivable. And, that's kind of what I'm thinking right now in terms of what sort of Zelda news we may see in May.
I think that's a really cool idea that that you pointed out about having some sort of interactable website, kind of like themed website to explore. I've been lucky enough to go to E3 a couple of times. I live really close. I'm like 20 minutes from where the convention is.
I'm like 16 hours away.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a bit of a trip.
I mean, I can teleport, so, yeah.
But one of the coolest things about E3 is like Nintendo's booth space is like this magical place every year. It's so much different than any of the competitors or other companies there. And that's something that obviously will be lost. It's like one of the most exciting things for Nintendo at E3, if you're able to go, is to check out how cool their booth is. They did New Donk City when Mario Odyssey was coming out. They did the awesome kind of forest with the Guardian sticking out of the ground for Breath of the Wild. Some really neat stuff. And I'm trying to think of a way to supplement that. And I think what you said about an interactive kind of E3 website with maybe some clues and hints in it. Sounds really cool.
Yeah.
But I do got to second your point about Age of Calamity DLC being the safe and most likely bet for anything big Zelda news pre E3. I feel like the next safe thing would possibly be showing Skyward Sword again. If there's possibly...
Mm-hmm.
We know when they made Wind Waker HD and Twilight Princess HD, there were some tweaks to the gameplay. They sped up your boat in Wind Waker and shortened the Triforce Hunt. They reduced those Tears of Light in Twilight Princess. Obviously, they've already changed the controls to support more traditional Zelda controls, but there could be some adjustments to maybe the dowsing mechanic or some of the progression that we just don't know of yet, that they could be showing that off as well.
True, there's a lot of quality of life things that we got in the last two
True.
Zelda ones, so...
Yeah.
I would love to see it not yelling at you and telling you what item you picked up every time you pick it up. And it's like, I've picked this one up before. Just because I save and quit doesn't mean I forgot what a blue rupee is.
I'm actually curious what you guys think on this. Do you guys think that Skyward Sword HD will have any sort of like new content going beyond quality of life stuff, like maybe like a dungeon or a side quest or something like that in there? Especially considering that with most of Nintendo's remasters nowadays, they add something new, like 3D World had Bowser's Fury, Pikmin 3 Deluxe had the epilogue and prologue missions, Definitive Edition for Xenoblade had the Future Connected. Like, do you think that maybe this remaster could also have some sort of new content in there like those?
I feel like the most likely thing they would add is just more things to do in the sky area, because I feel like that's one of the big complaints, is that there's barely anything to do in that.
Yeah, I feel like if there is some added content, it's not going to be anything major. I just feel like, obviously they're deep into development with Breath of the Wild 2. We've got the Skyward Sword HD coming out, and then potentially, Wind Waker HD, Twilight Princess HD, and who knows, maybe we'll be talking about it, but Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask coming to Switch, whether it's eShop or some sort of physical
Final
collection.
Fantasy VII style remake.
Yeah. Please.
I'm just kidding.
I know.
Where am I?
Hopefully we get that for the 5th year.
Legit, last year I had a whole video talking about this topic. Like, what if Nintendo treated Ocarina of Time the way Square Enix has treats Final Fantasy VII, and like full-blown reimagines the game? We'll get into that later. It's probably not happening, but I'm just having fun here. Yeah, I don't actually think that Skyward Sword HD is going to have new content like a Bowser's Fury or Future Connected. Not that I wouldn't want it. It's just I'm so confident on Breath of the Wild 2 really not being that far off that I think adding new content like that kind of gets in the way of that. Now, I understand some people argue the pricing. This is a $60 game. You have other Nintendo remasters that are $60 games, and they have new content. There's more graphical changes done. And yeah, I see your point with that, but there are games Nintendo has released that don't have that much extra content, and they sell it at full price. Like, this is something that Nintendo does sometimes. I think with the quality of life changes and the control changes, you could argue those control changes are very significant, more than they had to be for Wind Waker and Twilight Princess. That's kind of enough. I just don't think the price is a really strong sticking point in terms of what Nintendo does. So I think it's still going to come out we already know it's going to be $60, and the quality of life changes I think will pretty much be it. But they may detail a few more of those as well, or at least kind of showcase it a bit more. But I feel like that might even just be a treehouse thing. But considering that there may be a huge focus on Breath of the Wild 2, they may feature it beforehand. So that's a possibility. But let's kind of just catch up with the chat here, and then we'll jump to Pokemon Snap. Quite a few people in the chat. I appreciate it, guys. Thank you all for being here. Okay, I'll take this one more comment, and then we will jump into Pokemon Snap. Okay, cool. All right, so Pretzels added me. What do you think of Mario Kart 9? Is there a chance of it being at E3, or will they wait till Switch 2 for it? So I do think right now that we're waiting for Switch 2. Why do I think that? Just because they can. Like, all right, there's more to it than that. It's not that I don't think there's a chance that it could be at I think there's a chance it could be at E3, but my thinking right now is that it won't be. And the main reasoning for that is there's a couple things, actually. One, Samus Hunter, who's proven to be a very good leaker, is saying that Mario Kart 9 is not happening anytime soon. So there's that. But also, as we discussed earlier, I do feel like we're about 2.5 to 3.5 years from the next generation Switch, which is about a whole development cycle here. I think if they were to come out with Mario Kart 9 this holiday, it would be kind of a stretch to make sure the next Mario Kart would be ready for the next generation Switch. And so I feel like timing wise, it might make more sense to save a Mario Kart 9 for like as a launch day title or launch window title for the next generation system.
Could you imagine that? How epic that would be?
Yeah.
If we got Mario Kart 9 as a launch title.
Yeah,
that would be madness.
I mean, it would be epic to get Mario Kart 9 now. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's a small possibility that if we don't get Mario Kart 9, like it really doesn't happen on Switch, that maybe what they do is they give us a bit of an expansion to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Now I understand that might be pipe dreamy to think. It might be too optimistic, and I know. But I'm saying I think it's a little bit more likely than what I would have thought a year ago. And that's because look at what's happening with Super Mario Party. 2.5 years later, they added a whole element to the game. They completely revamped the online. That's a pretty significant update. And you look at all of the reports and rumors about a revision to the Nintendo Switch. As we sort of get deeper and deeper to Switch's life cycle, and Nintendo puts out more and more Wii U ports. We're running out of Wii U ports. What happens when there's no more Wii U ports to port? Nintendo's gonna need something else to sort of be like a fluff content kind of thing. Maybe at that point they start resorting more to some of their older back catalog games like GameCube games and more Wii games and things of that nature. Absolutely, they can do that and remaster those. That might be our best avenue to get an F-Zero GX HD with online. Like that may happen a few years down the road just like that. But another thing they may focus on are kind of like special updates that offer 4K capabilities for these older games, like Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, like Mario Odyssey, like the initial Breath of the Wild, and maybe also like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, they add a 4K option. But maybe alongside that 4K update, they also perhaps look at that as an opportunity to add a little bit more content, like maybe they add a couple more Grand Prix, and they sell it to us for a little bit of money. I think there's a small possibility they could do that, like a small one, but I'm just kind of putting it out there. But anyway, just to sort of like fully answer your question, even though I've already been talking for like 7 minutes, I think more likely there will not be a Mario Kart 9 because of leaks, but also because Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is currently, Animal Crossing may pass it, but it's a 30+ million selling game. It's an evergreen game, meaning it's going to continue to sell throughout the Switch's life cycle and probably beyond that even. So Nintendo doesn't really have a need to bring out another Mario Kart. However, there's a couple things that are good counter arguments for that. Splatoon 3 just got announced, and I feel like you could have made a similar argument for that, because Splatoon 2 is a bit of an evergreen title. It's selling pretty well, and so there wasn't really that much of a need to do that. But they went ahead and did it anyway. And you could maybe argue that because Nintendo's coming out with this mid-gen refresh Switch revision, that they perhaps want to kind of follow up some of that with brand new games, which does support the idea of a Mario Kart 9, actually. Maybe they want that to kind of sort of push the system. But and another consideration here is just that we haven't gone at like a mainline home console Mario Kart, excluding 8 Deluxe, since 8 itself back in 2014. It might just be kind of time to do it. So I think it could kind of go either way, but just because Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is already doing really well, I don't think Nintendo's going to revamp every single franchise on Switch for the Switch revision. I think it's probably more likely to expect Mario Kart 9 for a next-gen Switch a couple years from now. But we'll see. It's not out of the question.
Yeah, if you guys want Mario Kart 9, stop buying Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, please. Just stop buying it. And tell all your friends to stop buying it, too.
Yeah, once it slows down, maybe that's when Nintendo does it.
But I could see, I think that would be awesome if Nintendo did a new Mario Kart as a launch title. I also think it would work really well as late in the Switch's life cycle, and then deluxe version re-released on
Yes.
the successor,
Yeah.
I think would work well. Obviously, that worked well with the Wii U. Even though the Wii U wasn't a big seller, I think if the Wii U was a big seller, I think Mario Kart 8 Deluxe would still sell great on the Switch, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I do think there's more value in the Wii U ports because so little actually played it, the Wii U.
Yeah.
So if because the Switch is so successful, it might even be, if this is true and they end up selling 30 million the 5th year, there could very well be the best-selling system of all time. It's like an entirely different sort of situation. So if we start seeing a lot of Switch ports to Switch 2, especially when there's a good chance they may be backwards compatible, that may not be the direction they take. They may not do that, right? They may rely more on games that came out like during the Wii and the GameCube era to remaster those.
Yeah.
So it's going to be tough, but we'll see what happens. But anyway, we'll come back to the chat after the next couple topics. But let's talk about the new Pokemon Snap for a little bit. So, like I said earlier, I haven't had a chance to fully sink my teeth into this game. I've just been kind of busy lately. But I did play it for a little bit. I did watch some of my friends play it for a little bit. And I just gotta say, the game visually is very stunning. The game even has voice acting, which is not really something you see in Pokemon games. I can't think of one that has actual legit voice acting. This game does.
The first.
Yeah, you're probably right. So the visual presentation is just visual and audio presentation is very strong. It's great from that perspective. But then from a gameplay perspective, what I'm noticing is that the game is fairly deep. So like you go on like these short little like on-rail sections where you take pictures. There's different ways you can interact with the environment, and you kind of have to be very smart about how you sort of aim and look around to try and find different secrets and different angles for these Pokemon. But then the game rewards you for revisiting these areas, because as you get more comfortable with the different areas, different things happen to the Pokemon and the environment. So there's a lot of backtracking, but it's fun backtracking because it's kind of like trying to find that right picture and find a new Pokemon, and the environments and the Pokemon just react differently as progress in the game. So it's very intriguing so far, which even though I've barely seen a lot, I haven't seen a lot of it, but so far I'm very excited for it. And I think this is a pretty good follow-up to the original.
Yeah, I watched a review from, I think, Nintendo Life. I haven't gotten to play the game myself, and I've been watching a couple people play it, and there were a couple things I was like, yes, this is what I was hoping for. For example, like in the, I forget what they call it. Do they call it the Pokedex? Or there's like a whole dex that you unlock. Oh my god, the dog's being loud. Anyways, there's a whole like Pokedex you unlock when you take pictures of new Pokemon. And it lists it, but it not only does that, it also has like stars. And they're not like rating your picture necessarily. It's different positions and different scenarios that you take the photo of that Pokemon, and it will list it. So it will tell you like you've taken a photo of this Pokemon, but there's like 3 other different things you could do with this Pokemon that you still haven't done yet. And it actually tracks that and lists that, and you can actually fill it out, which is nice. Because I was kind of worried it was just going to be like, take a picture and get points, and we won't let you know anything else besides that. Hopefully you did good. Which is nice, so, yeah.
Yeah, I actually just got my copy today, believe it or not, so I haven't had a chance to get my hands on it. I'll probably be playing it after the podcast tonight, jumping in. But I am really excited. I was a big fan growing up of the original, obviously. And I'm really happy because checking out some of the reviews and some of the hands-on impressions of the game, I think I mentioned this in your podcast, Andres, the first time we discussed Pokemon Snap. But my biggest fear with the game was the original was about a 2-hour experience to complete the game. Obviously, a lot of replay value in there. But I was worried, like, can a modern day Pokemon Snap cost $60? And is it going to be meaty enough for you to feel like you got your money's worth?
Yeah.
Me, I can enjoy a couple-hour experience and pay $60 if it's a great experience. And the hours that I sunk in don't really matter as long as I enjoy the experience. But for a lot of other gamers, they might feel gypped. And I'm happy to report that a lot of people are saying they finished this game in roughly 15 hours, some even more than that, which is really cool and exciting to hear.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the game seems to have a lot of depth, and it seems like they did a pretty good job with this game. So I am pretty darn excited to play through this game. I think it's, I don't want to say I'm entirely surprised, because I did think it'd be pretty good, but I am relieved. I guess would perhaps be a little bit of a better word, because I did have some fear that maybe it wouldn't have that much depth to it, that maybe it would be a little bit on the smaller side of things, and maybe it wouldn't be that polished. But it seems to be like a fairly polished, fairly in-depth game, and that's awesome. So I'm very excited for this. Like there's a whole bunch of side quests and things of that nature to do. It seems like the game does give you decent reason to sort of backtrack and such. I have heard some people don't like the backtracking, but I like looking at things from different angles and kind of going for different shots and stuff. But I haven't played through the entire game, barely started it, so we'll see how things sort of pan out. But definitely, I'm very excited for Snap.
Yeah, and if you love Pokemon more, like beyond just battling, this is like such a cool way to see them in their natural habitat, for real. being Pokemon.
It's Pokemon National Geographic,
right?
Yeah. So that, to me, that's super exciting, because I'm very much into animals. I love cats and dogs and just nature in general. So to see Pokemon Snap sort of appeal to that a little bit, be making it more about like observing the natural habitats of Pokemon, that to me is like super awesome. But let me just kind of check in with the chat here, see what some of you guys are saying, and I think we pretty much ready to move on, unless there's anything else you guys want to add on this.
No, just I'm just excited to play, and I really love what I'm hearing and seeing from it. It seems like all my fears were kind of wiped away, and the game appears to be exceeding my expectations for a Pokemon Snap, I guess, so
yeah. There's a couple different interesting questions here. Armchair Analysis added me, Pokemon Snap having voice acting gives me hope for new Pokemon Mystery Dungeon with voice acting. It's interesting, actually, because I was talking about it with a friend. It's possible that maybe this is kind of the beginning of more Pokemon games having voice acting. Maybe once Generation 9 for Pokemon comes around, that also has voice acting. And maybe also, to your point, the next Mystery Dungeon has voice acting to some extent as well. I did find it interesting how in Pokemon Sword and Shield, the cutscenes did seem to be a lot more cinematic than previous Pokemon games, and the characters had their mouths and they were pretty well animated and they had moving lips, and you could have fit in voice acting there. Like, there are like fan videos that have voice acting and it makes sense, it fits. Like, they could have done it. So it kind of feels like they have been sort of moving in this direction, and now that we're seeing that Pokemon Company has approved of games made by Bandai Namco that are using the Pokemon franchise with voice acting, maybe they're thinking that they want to up the ante a little bit more, and the next mainline Pokemon game may also have voice acting. I don't think Legends Arceus is going to have it. I'd love to be wrong on that one, but yeah, I do feel like maybe for Generation 9, which may be a little bit of a longer ways off thanks to Legends Arceus, I do think by that point we could see some voice acting there. So we'll see. Ronnie Fazio added me, what Pokemon game with Bandai Namco assisting would you like to see next? I would love a more narrative-focused Pokemon game similar to the Digimon story games. So I haven't played the Digimon story games, but kind of just me sort of thinking about what would I want them to do next. I wouldn't be opposed to a Pokken Tournament 2, but in terms of something new, I mean, Pokemon Snap has been like the thing, the spin-off that I've been wanting for so long. I would kind of love to see a Pokemon Stadium, I guess, but at the same time, I guess what I would actually prefer is just them to continue to evolve the mainline series to have those stadium-like elements, because that's kind of what it already is. What I actually want going beyond that, though, is taking the mini games we had from Stadium 1 and 2 and just kind of fleshing that idea out, having basically like the Mario Party but for Pokemon. I think that could be really fun. Like, I really love the mini games in Pokemon Stadium, so I would definitely be down for that. But then also we were talking about Mystery Dungeon a little bit ago. Like maybe they make a more ambitious Mystery Dungeon. And maybe you don't have to have Bandai Namco do that, but the point is that I do think there's room for other Pokemon spin-offs to be, pretty ambitious. Pokemon Type I think is pretty ambitious. I would say Pokemon Tournament was fairly ambitious for the time. A new Pokemon Tournament could be amazing. And, maybe it would be nice to see like a Mario Party style game that isn't just Mario characters from Nintendo.
Mhm.
Pokemon I think would be probably a really good fit for that. Let's see here. Jean-Carl Adamy, Gen 9 or Pokemon Legends Arceus with voice acting. I just think that from what we've seen of Legends Arceus, it doesn't look like there will be voice acting. However, that's actually kind of wrong now that I'm thinking about it, because the initial trailer for Legends Arceus has voice acting in it, actually. It's like an old lady or something, right? It's very reminiscent of the Breath of the Wild like legend trailer with Impa kind of telling you the legend of Breath of the Wild. Yeah, there's a lady.
Yeah, it's like a voice.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe there will be some sort of voice acting there, actually.
I mean, I was gonna say this earlier. I feel like Gen 9 is almost in my head. If Gen 9 doesn't have voice acting, that's gonna be crazy. And then I'm like, I hope that Arceus has voice acting. Like, I think they can put it in. But I feel like Gen 9 has to have voice acting.
Yeah. I had not thought about it until I thought about the trailer again. There is some voice acting in there. Now I don't know if they'll have in-game cutscenes with it. It's kind of hard for me to see it just because, well, the game's still in an early stage, so we'll see. I think they showed the game off to us at a very early state. The frame rate was really low. The resolution was really low. Just like a certain...
The world was a bit empty too.
Yeah. So I think the game's probably... It's still very early on. But at least that really cutscene has voice acting, so... Say it again?
I noticed that they had like barely any LODs, like the level of distance, so like there was almost no pop-in on anything. There was like a couple rocks I noticed in the trailer that popped in, but like all the trees seem to be rendered fully all the way in the distance, which probably is tanking frame rate. So it seems like there's a lot of optimization things they haven't put into the game, which is why it's running like that. Right,
which is just another sign that it's just still very early on. Even though the game's going to come out early 2022, that's just how Game Freak is. But yeah, we'll see. But the initial trailer does have voice acting, I guess. So, maybe we do see some voice acting in Legends Arceus. And if that's the case, if that actually happens, I do feel like Legends Arceus is going to be kind of like a bridge for Gen 9. Because Game Freak is exploring this open world concept even more, so they're evolving the wild area idea. What's interesting about the mainline Pokemon games is that it's not that hard to predict what they're gonna do. Because all you have to do to sort of predict what Game Freak is going to do with their next Pokemon games is just look at what they've been doing lately and just think what direction they're headed in. If you go back to Sun and Moon, or even before that with Gen 6, they created a fully 3D world, even though, it was still simple. Then in Gen 7 for Sun and Moon, the world was less grid-like. There was more things you could do with the environment in terms of exploring with the ride Pokemon. Like, you could tell that they are moving in a direction of more traditional 3D games. Still far off, but they were getting there. And then with Let's Go, they had ride Pokemon and Pokemon following you around. And guess what? Sword and Shield has kind of all those elements to another degree. So, well, not the ride Pokemon. They kind of went back on that one. But overall, though, Pokemon in the roaming the environment, right? Pokemon following you around the wild areas, like they've made it more of a traditional open world style kind of game. And now with Legends Arceus, it's fully open world, right? So I do feel like they are moving in that direction, and maybe also what we're seeing with this voice acting here could also be a sign of that. That would be amazing. I think a lot of fans would be like, man, they finally did it,
Yeah.
So, we'll see, though. We'll see.
Yeah,
So,
I'm
no, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go on. Yeah.
No, you're fine.
Yeah.
I just want to say, like, I'm so curious. Like, the most fascinating question to me is, what does Pokemon Legends Arceus mean for future generation Pokemon? And what, like, how much? Because when you get a new gen of Pokemon, like, like the mainline series, it's usually the bigger, better Pokemon adventure as opposed to like the other games that are a little bit smaller in scope. But this obviously is the most ambitious thing that they've ever done. So naturally, you expect the gens to be the most ambitious. I'm curious what ambitions from this game they're going to carry over into the new gens to make them even, greater than we've seen in the past, or if they're going to try and find a balance between the two.
Yeah, I don't know. It's tricky, right? Because this goes against the pattern. Legends Arceus is against the pattern in a way because they've never done this before. Game Freak is the developer for the mainline Pokemon games. That's what they do. And instead of focusing on a mainline traditional Pokemon game, they are doing Legends Arceus. And I think part of this could be that they want to lengthen the generation a little bit more. Conceivably, we don't see Gen 9 next year. Which, would be going against the pattern because the last decade and a half or so, something like that, the generations have been lasting 3 years. Maybe because of Legends Arceus, that's going to push it to 4. We'll see. I'm not going to assume that quite yet because they could come out with Legends Arceus in March 2022 and still release a new Pokemon generation in November. Like, that's not out of the question for them, especially if they're very different, where Legends Arceus has no multiplayer and maybe it's not even that long of an open world single player experience. It's hard to say for sure, but I feel like if there's a time for them to finally kind of lengthen the generation a little bit, it's kind of now. So it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, so you would have the Legend series, right? And then they have DLC now, so that kind of helps them as well, and they can kind of skip those third versions. But then, of course, remakes are still a thing. But maybe they will just start outsourcing remakes like they've done with Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl. So maybe the new pattern will be DLC, the Legend series, and then the mainline series. And they'll lengthen the generation a little bit, and they'll outsource for the remakes. And that gives Game Freak more time to focus on their games, make them denser, make them more ambitious, which will be sort of answering to the cries of fans for the last few years. So
definitely.
And that might be a way for Pokemon Company to satisfy their desire to have consistent sales for their franchise and updates for the franchise every year between DLC, outsourced remakes, the Legend series, and the mainline games. They can spread out that generation and still satisfy the entire fan base and their sales. So maybe that's it. But yeah, let's move on unless you guys have anything else to add on that.
No, let's mosey on down to the next topic.
Let's jump into the actual topics of the discussion, what most of you guys came in here for. So, where do we start? Do I talk about Donkey Kong first? Do I talk about Zelda? Do I talk about Switch Pro stuff? This is tough.
Oh, it's a conundrum.
This is tough. You know what? Let's talk about Donkey Kong first, because I feel like the Zelda stuff and the Switch Pro stuff kind of they're intertwined. So the Donkey Kong situation. What's going on with this Donkey Kong situation? So the reason we're talking about the channel is because I put out a video recently on the channel, and I guess I had a discussion with Samus Hunter on both Donkey Kong and Zelda. So I put out some videos of that. So I guess I kind of shared a little bit of information that Samus Hunter was willing to convey, and I'll just kind of go over quickly what Samus Hunter told me about Donkey Kong. So yeah, I read this in my video, but I'll just read it out again real quickly here. So I asked about Donkey Kong because someone had came to me in DM, was like, hey, so I heard this, what do you think? And I was like, I don't know, I'll ask Samus Hunter. So this is what Samus Hunter said in reference to Donkey Kong. Yes, earlier this year I was able to find some information on many upcoming Nintendo project plans, and Donkey Kong was one of them. I could only read small excerpts, and unfortunately I don't have any pictures of the game. Nintendo plans to revitalize the Donkey Kong IP with the goal of making it as popular again as it was in the SNES N64 era. It's no coincidence that in addition to the game, Nintendo's plans for a DK-themed Super Nintendo World expansion and the recent update to Diddy Kong's artwork is another step in making the characters more modern in their depiction. This new artwork, though, is mainly related to general marketing, is not something from the new game, as at most they will use it in some spin-off. As for the game, it's a return to an in-house production under the guidance of the EPD Tokyo team, which is also one of the groups that controls the Mario brand. In the excerpts, they talk about 3D environments, but it is not clear if they mean a 3D as Mario Odyssey or designed in 2.5D as Tropical Freeze. So there's a lot there, but basically, you know, what I talked about in my video was that, yeah, so there's been this Diddy Kong render going around. It's an updated render. It's not just a texture change. They kind of reshaped it a little bit as well. The expression is slightly different. And I do think that's kind of mostly for marketing. That means actually it's entirely for marketing. I don't think it's necessarily like a leak of a particular game. But then also there we know about the plans for a Donkey Kong expansion to Super Nintendo World, which I think a lot of us would kind of scratch our heads at, because Donkey Kong isn't like Nintendo's second biggest franchise. Like, they did entirely Mario for the grand opening of Super Nintendo World in Japan. There's no Zelda. There's no Animal Crossing. There's no Pokemon. All of those franchises are huge. Animal Crossing has sold 30 plus million. Breath of the Wild has sold 20 plus million. Pokemon has sold 20 plus million. Those are the big franchises. And they're not... There's currently no signs of those, really, in Super Nintendo World. No sort of, like, actual rides or attractions there. So it's strange that instead of those bigger ones, it seemed like Nintendo's going to focus on Donkey Kong first. But here's the thing. If you think about the history of Nintendo, right? The history of Nintendo is Donkey Kong. Nintendo's first big success was Donkey Kong. Sure, they had Radar Scope before that, but they actually used Radar Scope and transitioned it into Donkey Kong, and that's how they found their in the United States and North America, and then that bloomed, then boom, then it became an incredibly popular game, and Donkey Kong had Mario for the first time, which is known as Jumpman, but then Mario got his name, then that, you know, then everything else is history, right? Like, Nintendo became what we know of Nintendo now. So Donkey Kong's very important for the history and roots of Nintendo. Mm-hmm. So to have a Donkey Kong element to a Nintendo park actually makes a lot of sense when you consider the history of things. So there's that. But then it's also Donkey Kong's 40th anniversary. So it may be the case that Nintendo wants to push out some sort of big Donkey Kong game in conjunction with all these different things. I mean, with the Nintendo Park and the anniversary. I think the Diddy Kong thing could just be evidence of Nintendo sort of ramping up their potential promotional plans for Donkey Kong. And I do think a Donkey Kong game makes a lot of sense. It's a better selling franchise than some of other Nintendo's unused IP. And again, that history. And the rumors that have come, we've been sort of hearing about from credible places for a while now, that Samus Hunter's also corroborating, is that, yeah, the Mario team is working on this Donkey Kong game. Now, where there's debate is it going to be a 3D Donkey Kong game? Is it going to be a 2D Donkey Kong game? We don't know yet. Supposedly, there's at least 3D environments, but that can still go either way. I do think it would be interesting if the Mario Odyssey team was the team that they put behind to make a 2D Donkey Kong game. That does seem a little strange to me. But at the same time, if they want to use this Donkey Kong game to put Donkey Kong back on the map, make it another one of Nintendo's big recurring adventure games like Zelda and Mario, so they have another one in their back pocket alongside Metroid Prime as well, then all of a sudden Nintendo could kind of, you know, follow up every year. Donkey Kong for this holiday, Zelda for this holiday, Super Mario for this holiday, Metroid Prime for this holiday. Like, that could be like their big single-player franchises, and of course we have Splatoon and Smash and Mario Kart and Animal Crossing for the more casual sort of multiplayer side of things. Like, that could be Nintendo's plan here. So yeah, there's something going on with Donkey Kong. I'll tell you, not just like public sort of like leakers and such. I actually have heard things privately from others that I'm not going to divulge. But yeah, I think Donkey Kong is happening. So yeah, I think it's real. We don't know that, but you know, I personally think it's real, and I'm very excited about it. I'm just not sure if it's going to be like an Odyssey-style Donkey Kong or a side-scrolling Donkey Kong. Maybe it's going to be like a mix of both. But what do you guys think?
You know, I've been on the fence a bit about whether there's going to be a Donkey Kong, but more and more information keeps coming out, more and more reasons to think that there's going to be a Donkey Kong, and now I'm like, okay, I'm in that camp where I agree. I think there's going to be a Donkey Kong game. now I'm just like, oh god, is it gonna be 2D? Is it gonna be 3D? What's happening here? So, but I know, it's since it's been 2017 was the last time that team released a game. Coming up on 4 years this holiday since they've released anything, and I feel like it doesn't take 4 years to release a 2D Donkey Kong game, especially not from that big of a team. So I feel like either they're making a 3D Donkey Kong game, or they are also working on another 3D Mario, and that's why it's been taking longer.
Yeah,
But at
maybe
the
they're working on
same
two things at
time-
once.
At the same time, even with a smaller team, I feel like they could have gotten another, like a 2D game out by now, but maybe they were just waiting for the 40th anniversary or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess
But,
the other thing that's strange though, and I'm curious what you guys think on this, right? Like the Odyssey team, they make the Mario games, like they made 3D World and stuff, but before that they made the Galaxy games. But you know what happened before the Galaxy games? Donkey Kong Jungle Beat back on the GameCube. Like that team did that way back then. So there's a history of them working on Donkey Kong, but the better side-scrolling Donkey Kong games are from Retro Studios.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
So it's strange to me that they wouldn't just rely on Retro Studios to put out another Donkey Kong. Now, granted, it's been a while since we got Tropical Freeze. I want to say, 2014? So,
Yeah.
maybe
Been
they
quite
just
a bit.
have been going through so many changes, and now obviously they're working on Prime 4, but Prime 4, they didn't take up the reins of that until, or at least it wasn't announced until January 2019. Like, what happened between 2014 and 2019? They had to have been working on a few different projects. They haven't come to light. Maybe they were all canceled or pushed off. But, it just makes me wonder, like, why not just ask Retro Studios to work on Donkey Kong? Maybe timing-wise, they already knew they were going to be working on Prime 4, so that's why they decided to have the Mario team work on Donkey Kong. But I'm just saying, if they already have a proven developer that can make high-quality 2D Donkey Kong, why didn't they just go with them, So I do have to wonder that they're going to have a different direction here. I don't think it's going to be like exactly like Donkey Kong Country. I think it's going to be a little different. I think. But that doesn't mean fully 3D either, right? Like there is a middle ground here. And I'll say if you look at the different 3D Mario games, every 3D Mario game is somewhat hybridized. Like it's not just all pure 3D. Like they have 2D sections within the 3D Mario games. So, this team has experience with that. Maybe they're going to be trying something interesting with that as well. Like it's not entirely fully open 3D, but it's not entirely fully 2D either. It's going to be some sort of hybrid. I heard some people throw on the idea of what if it's kind of more like an isometric kind of game, kind of like 3D World. I wouldn't be opposed to that for a Donkey Kong game, actually. Like I would love to see what they could maybe do with that. Cool. So I think there's a lot of options there, and they would all be really exciting.
Yeah, I think that Donkey Kong is definitely coming sooner than later. The timing's right, like you said. Those retro games that they did were really great platformers. They performed well, and the 40th anniversary is coming up. I personally am leaning more towards a 3D/3D hybrid than your traditional 2D Donkey Kong game. I feel like 3D platformers are kind of making a comeback right now.
Yeah.
We're seeing that was like the golden age at one point during like the N64 days was kind of the golden age of the 3D platformer. And then it kind of fizzled out. We still got a lot of 2D platformers, but it's making a big comeback. We see the success of games like Mario Odyssey, obviously. We have a couple this year. Ratchet and Clank is another big 3D platformer, obviously on the PlayStation. PlayStation also got It Takes Two this year, which is a big 3D platformer. But we've seen smaller games like A Hat in Time, and the first entry in the Ukulele series was kind of trying to capture that 3D platformer magic from the N64 days. I think 3D platformers are on the rise. I'd love to see Donkey Kong take another stab at it after Donkey Kong 64, which was very hit and miss.
Sure.
Had some good stuff, had some bad stuff. But like you said, I think the possibility of a hybrid or even isometric 3D style game, I think that would work well with Donkey Kong.
Yeah.
I think those are both really good formats. And they could play around with some really unique and innovative ideas for the series.
I'm all for them experimenting with Donkey Kong. Like if they want to make Donkey Kong relevant again, and not just a little relevant like Kirby or Fire Emblem, but like I'm assuming Metro Prime 4 is going to be a super big deal, but like Legend of Zelda and Super Mario, they got to go big. And the Mario Odyssey team is the team to do it. So there's two directions I want to kind of go in here. So I'll talk about this one part first. So I want to believe 3D. Like I want to believe that, and I feel like in my video I probably was more pushing for that. And after the fact was like, oh, you know, while I did talk about both, I think I definitely was like more for 3D. Like I'm biased here, but like it's possible that, you know, we should maybe temper our expectations a little bit, because it's just sometimes things can be too good to be true. The Donkey Kong Country style of gameplay is proven. It has been very successful, and they'll tell you that the Donkey Kong Country games that sold back on the Wii, and the Wii U, they perform pretty well. Like the country games that have been made by Retro Studios are more successful than the Metroid Prime games. So maybe that's enough for Nintendo. Maybe they don't necessarily need to be a 10+ million seller, or maybe they believe that that kind of game, but in this modern era, would perform that well regardless. So maybe that's the case, or maybe they're going to do 2D, but they'll have a slightly different direction that will go over really well with fans and be even more successful than the Retro Studios games, which, to be totally honest with you, I think it's pretty hard to believe, because a lot of people, myself included, believe Tropical Freeze is one of the best side-scrolling games of all time. Like it's
my favorite 2D platformer ever made.
Go on.
Yeah, I was just gonna say the retro Donkey Kong games are like, there's no question in my opinion, they are the best of the best when it comes to Donkey Kong, and some of the best 2D platformers ever.
Yeah, so it's I think again, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier. It's a little strange that they would have the Odyssey team do a fully 2D Donkey Kong game, which leads me to believe that they're going to be experimenting a little bit. They might want to try and push the series to be even more successful than that. So, you know, maybe that's a possibility, but again, you know, take this all with a grain of salt. It may not even be real. I do think it is real, but, you know, even if it's real, we don't know if it's going to be 3D or 2D or somewhere in between. We don't know that yet.
Yeah.
But,
I feel like that
go on,
team
Brandon, sorry.
is just the type of team that always experiments with every game they make. Like, they don't make just standard cookie cutter games or games that follow the
really
games. They
really
never have. There's not one game that they've made that, like,
they don't make
than, like,
safe
a direct
games.
Sequel.
That is such an amazing point, Brandon. Yeah.
And the thing too is that Donkey Kong is one of those series that, like, it works so well to do something crazy, like shake up the formula. Like it's one of those franchises that I think would really benefit from it, and it kind of suits it.
Yeah, the other thing is that Tropical Freeze is already on the Switch, and it's not like, I mean, I'm not saying it's, I want to look up the sales numbers. Like, I don't remember it being like
did
okay, but they didn't do amazing is the point.
No.
If the idea is to resurrect the Donkey Kong franchise and have it be kind of bringing back the heyday of Donkey Kong, maybe just copying that gameplay style isn't great. And to your point, Brandon, if you look at the Odyssey team, what they do, they're very experimental. They try a lot of new ideas. They're not very cookie cutter. They're always doing something different, going in a different direction. But let me just look up the Tropical Freeze sales on Switch. Like, how great was it? By December 2018, it had sold 2.8 million. So that's a while ago. I would assume it's continued to sell well, but
That's good for a 2D side scroller.
It's not a 10+ million seller though. It's not one of the top 20 best-selling Switch games, I don't think.
How much did you say?
2
million?
2 million as of December 2018 though. That was a while ago.
Oh yeah, that was a long time ago.
Yeah, I want something more up to date. There's VG charts, which might not be super reliable. Good question.
Yeah, VG charts is not the best. They get you a decent-ish ballpark, sort of.
I just want a ballpark. If maybe someone in the chat knows.
I don't know. The information may not be public at all. We might not know.
Apparently, it sold 4 million on the Wii U.
Okay.
Yeah. Point is that, like, it's a good seller, but it could have been so much better on Switch.
a little bit of credit. People did really hate on that release because of the price, and I feel like there was just a lot of negativity around the game in general when it released. Even
Yeah.
the game's
They had
awesome
Funky
because
Kong,
people
though.
were like, it's like, yeah, all they added was Funky Kong, and it was $10 more than the last game. Oh, and they made it 1080
The eShop.
720, but those are
The Wii
They
U
took it down,
eShop
yeah.
thing too.
Yeah,
where
there-
they
there
took
was
it
some
down.
controversy
Upset a
there.
lot of people.
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, the game still sold, but the point is it wasn't like a megaton seller, right? So, it just kind of makes you wonder, like, why would Nintendo have the Odyssey team work on that? Which I think to support our thinking here that they're going to be experimental with it. Like, if it's going to be side-scrolling, they're at least going to do something new with it. It's not just going to be straight up like previous country games. That's what we're speculating right now, right? But there's something else I want to speak to here. So, you look at what Nintendo accomplished with Breath of the Wild, right? They spent so much time on that engine. They did incredible things. But you know what else was kind of like a pretty special engine? The Mario Odyssey engine. Like, what they did with that game was pretty special and remarkable. It was a modern 3D open sandbox platforming game. And there was not even any paid DLC for this. Like, it makes you wonder, like, will Nintendo really just create this awesome engine and just never really, like, do much with it? I'm just kind of wondering if they would have, like, maybe used it for something else. And an interesting thing about Odyssey is that Odyssey almost feels more like a successor, not to Mario 64, but Banjo and Kazooie, because of the gameplay style is more of like a collectathon style kind of game. It really would be great. Like, so I would also, there's speculation going around that there's some sort of rare, not rare, but rare, but also Microsoft and Nintendo collaboration here. Like, what if, they use the Odyssey engine on a new Banjo-Kazooie game or remake? Like, that would be amazing, and that would fit really well. But you know what Rare also worked on besides Banjo and Kazooie? Donkey Kong 64. Like, there's a lot of similarities to Donkey Kong 64 and Banjo Kazooie from a gameplay perspective. So, like, just kind of considering that in mind, like, what if they were to do a proper Donkey Kong 64 that would be, appropriately designed? Because I know people had some issues with the way that game was put together with the Odyssey engine. Like, that kind of makes sense from that perspective, to kind of use it for that. Not saying that's what they're going to do, but it's just kind of strange that they would just move on from Odyssey and not do anything else with it at all when they've done something else with pretty much everything else they've developed this generation.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I think if they do go the more like open world 3D platformer route, they should tone back. They went too crazy with the characters in the 64 version. Stick with like the core.
I love me some Lanky Kong.
Yeah.
Saying
Dude.
you don't want my chunky boy come
Yeah,
back.
Chunky Kong, Tiny
Mom.
Kong. Obviously, Diddy Kong's got to be there, but they were great.
No, listen. I think it was great for the time, but I think for now, for like a modern reboot, they should stick with the core.
I mean,
but bring back the DK rap. That's all I have.
Heck
oh,
yeah,
a new
bring back the
DK rap would be so sick.
Yeah,
It would be
I'm-
so sick.
I'm fine having the other characters as long as I don't have individual collectibles for each character. Just give them different powers and let me traverse the world differently. I don't need to be like, oh, these are red bananas. Let me switch to Diddy.
Well,
Oh, these are different. Oh, I gotta switch. No, stop, please.
the interesting thing, like that's kind of like almost an easy fix. So, like, if you just let the Kongs collect universally most of the collectibles and maybe just have a few specific ones where you have to kind of change your character, maybe you can kind of change on the fly. Like, if you make a change like that, all of a sudden Donkey Kong 64 is amazing, right? Like,
Sure.
It
Yeah.
was
Yeah,
it was
it's a lot
annoying
better.
because you had to do a lot of backtracking and you couldn't change on the fly and stuff like that to get all of the collectibles everywhere. But a simple change, and I think still having those 5 Kongs would be great because it is a lot of gameplay variety. And if you pay
That's
attention
true,
to platformers, at least the Mario ones, and everyone else tries to sort of copy them, variety to the gameplay is kind of what makes them good. Think about it. Mario Odyssey, you capture different creatures, and it gives you a whole bunch of different like gameplay options with that, right? The Galaxy games, you had a lot of different power-ups. 3D World, a lot of different power-ups. Mario 64 had some power-ups as well. Like, and even when Sunshine with Flood, like, there was multiple modes of gameplay in terms of how you platformed. So this kind of like there's a bit of a mold there in terms of how you make a good platformer, variation to the gameplay. So I do feel like if they do make a 3D Donkey Kong platformer, they're gonna want to give you some variety. Even 2D platformers have multiple characters with the country games, so
Sure.
they're gonna think of ways to offer variety with how you platform. It doesn't have to be other characters. It could be like, I don't know, maybe Donkey Kong wears like different headbands, and each headband gives him like some sort of different boost or something. I personally would prefer just different characters, but there's different ways to go about doing it.
Yeah, I think you brought up a good point, both of you, about the collectibles, and I think that would have helped kind of make that work a lot more fun and be more enticing. I also like the idea of it kind of working in the same way that Banjo-Kazooie did, where Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong are, kind of like one character, but you're working together using different techniques between the two characters to solve obstacles and getting power-ups. But yeah, I think either would work.
Yeah, I mean, this is just exciting to think about. There's so much potential, I think, with this game. Like, I've told you guys about my idea that, like, the ideal, like, 3D Donkey Kong game would be kind of like making it like Tarzan. Like, imagine Donkey Kong with some weight behind him, because he's big, strong Donkey Kong, but he's flying through the air, grabbing vines, sliding through branches in this thick jungle. Like, that could be some very unique platforming that would just be amazing. Like,
I think the Odyssey team would be good at that.
They absolutely would, I think. Like,
Mario just has such good momentum already.
Right, exactly. It's based off momentum. Like, Odyssey, it just makes so much sense when you think about what they were to do with that platforming engine in Odyssey. Like, there's a lot to the momentum and how you go about doing things. Adapt that for an awesome gorilla in a jungle. Like, it would be different, but there's to be some similarity there. Like, I feel like they could pivot and still make a very unique game with that. That would just be really cool. And there may be challenges going through a thick jungle and with all of that stuff like that. But there's just an idea. Like, there's different ways they can kind of go about doing stuff like that. But I'm just excited for Donkey Kong. Would be amazing. Whatever it is, 2D or 3D would be great, because I love Tropical Freeze, and the things they did that would be amazing. But I am siding with something a little bit different than 2D, just because it seems like that would make more sense if it's the Odyssey team working on this. Maybe maybe it's not quite the Odyssey team working on this, or maybe they have a smaller team working on this, right? And they are working on the next 3D Mario. But to kind of close off this topic, I'll say that I am of the frame of mind that the way things seem to be right now, when you consider that we just got 3D World with Bowser's Fury, which was, I would say, a fairly extensive, like, new sort of Mario campaign within a game, that might be what Nintendo did to kind of give us, like, that extra 3D Mario fix, and they're now going to transition to preparing a big brand new 3D Mario for the beginning of their next system, because we're now, maybe 2.5 to 3.5 years away. Like, if you consider development cycles, like, it takes 2 to 5 years. They probably should already be starting the designs for that, at least, because they're gonna want to have 3D Mario at least available within about a year of the launch of their next system.
Yeah.
So, timing wise, maybe it is the case that this Donkey Kong game has been the full effort of the Odyssey team, and as they're finishing this Donkey Kong game, they're now going to transition to the next 3D Mario, and they have 3D World to kind of, satisfy and satiate the desire for Mario platforming fans.
Man, I'm just thinking about, like, the potential of, like, if we do get some sort of 3D open world or hybrid style, the potential for boss fights, because Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze and Returns has some pretty awesome and challenging boss fights in it. I'd love to see the Odyssey team tackle boss fights in a Donkey Kong game in a more kind of 3D environment. Would be really cool. I think.
I'm glad you brought that up, because kind of sticking to, like, the 2D side of things, right? Because they made Jungle Beat. They made Jungle Beat before Galaxy, and that was a side-scrolling Donkey Kong game, but it also had, like, these fights where you had with Kongs, and, like, they were like boxing matches, and you could play the game with the bongos, so you'd be, like, slamming down to, like, beat down another, like, bulky, muscular gorilla. So it was very, like, testosterone, super macho, like, fighting. And it was just very interesting, that direction they had with Donkey Kong Jungle Beat, So, you know, when you think about that history of Donkey Kong being like, you know, a very brawlic, strong character, it would be nice to see him kind of them sort of play to that, right? Like, because with Mario, I'm not saying Mario's weak, but he doesn't really rely necessarily on like super strength to beat enemies. He relies on bonking their heads or something like that, or some sort of funny power up.
He hasn't really had a punch since Mario 64.
Can't think of one. There's some of the dives and kicks, but yeah, there's not much, right? Like Donkey Kong's more of an actual fighter, so it would be interesting to see them kind of have more of maybe an action element to the game as well. That would be it would be pretty darn cool for sure. So we'll see, but let me check on the chat here unless there's anything else you guys want to add for Donkey Kong.
No, I think we covered it.
All right,
pretty good.
All right, let's see here. I know I got a few ads. I'm gonna backtrack a little bit. Let's see here. This is going back to when we were talking about Pokemon Tournament. Flippin suggested Pokemon Dragon Ball Fighters because we were talking about maybe Bandai Namco making another crossover. That'd be interesting. Paint Fat Purple. I would love an off-rails open world Snap later on down the road like Switch 2. I don't know. I think the on-rails aspect of it does kind of make it challenging, but I'll also tell you, Legends Arceus isn't going to be a mainline Pokemon game, and it's kind of does seem to be more of a focus on catching rather than battling in that environment. So maybe Legends Arceus is going to be kind of like what you're maybe hoping for, or maybe the sequel to Legends Arceus, perhaps, as they kind of advance that idea. That Breaks Kid. Still waiting for some sort of new virtual console GameCube games. Pricing is flying higher every day. Yeah, I do think that Nintendo might have some legacy content on the way. I feel like actually a hint towards that are the emulators they made for 3D All-Stars. Perhaps they're planning on emulating other games as well. Maybe we'll see Ocarina of Time Majora's Mask come out this year. It'll be kind of like that, like the Mario 64 remaster. So, you know, maybe. Moving on here. Yeah, I can't get to every chat, guys. I'm sorry, but I'm just kind of picking out some of them. Let's see here. On just restart. Yeah, Jean-Claude Adamy. Probably a Donkey Kong game Nintendo EBD Tokyo is developing is 2D. You think it might be 2D? Could be. Could be. We won't know until they show it off, probably. That Breaks Kid. Whatever 3D Donkey Kong comes out, they better have an updated DK wrap. Yeah, if they go 3D, they need to have a DK wrap. Well, we all agree with that. That is absolutely necessary.
Here we go.
And imagine that's the reveal. Like that's the reveal. Like it's not like they'll show off gameplay later into the trailer, but they start off with a DK wrap. Like you see like a more appropriately realized like very realistic fur Donkey Kong come out on the stage with the mic, and then everyone's like, "What's going on?" And then he starts rapping. You see Cranking Kong like like oh man. It's just like a modern DK rap, and then like as they're playing the cool music, it then jumps into like footage of the game. Like that would be sick.
Yes.
I think that would trend so well. Like a modern day DK rap from Nintendo, people will go nuts for it, and I think that would probably instantly guarantee the game's like a 5+ million seller at least. Like it would just be, it would be amazing. iSonic, yeah. iSonic Academy. Since Skyward Sword HD is real, do you think Donkey Kong Country Returns can be remastered for Switch? It can be remastered for Switch. I'm not expecting it. I don't know. I don't want to say never, but there's just so many games they could remaster. Considering that they already have Tropical Freeze on the system, and maybe it's better than Nintendo thinks about another franchise that's not on Switch at all right now. Like maybe like Wave Race or F-Zero or Kid Icarus. Like imagine a Kid Icarus Uprising HD, for example. Like I'd rather they maybe like remaster that than another Returns. But I'll tell you that they did put Returns 3D on the 3DS, so Nintendo has shown a bit of a love for remastering or porting the initial Country Returns. ASAP Rel, 3D World style Donkey Kong 4-player co-op and online with DK, Diddy, Dixie, and Cranky as playable characters. Now, wouldn't that be beautiful? Yeah, I'd be down. DE Fox, speaking of 3D platforms, we got Bound Wonderworld, which was garbage. It had massive potential, but it didn't live up to any of it. Yep.
Yeah, let's not talk about Balin on this podcast.
Yeah. I think
scary.
that pretty much sums it up, though.
Yeah.
Let's see here. Giancarlo is saying, Nintendo or any company should never attempt another 3D Donkey Kong game. Donkey Kong 64 showed 3D don't work well with Donkey Kong. I don't agree with that.
The gameplay worked really well. It was just like the way they had the collectibles set up that was the biggest issue.
Yeah. I mean, we kind of touched on it earlier. Like, I think if you just modify some of that, they could do really well. I mean, Odyssey, I feel like is actually proof that you could probably make a good Donkey Kong game. As I sort of talked about earlier, Odyssey is kind of like what Donkey Kong 64 and Banjo-Kazooie kind of were back in the day. It was more of a collectathon style kind of game, and it worked really, really well. I think they could make a Donkey Kong game work. Like, Donkey Kong 64 didn't even have like that much crazy acrobatic stuff. Like, there was some of it, but it was like just basically jumping on vines and things. It was pretty grounded, and unless you jump into barrels and stuff, which is very similar to the cannons in Mario anyway. So, you know, I think they could very easily make a 3D Donkey Kong. Maybe not easily, but you know, if they can make 3D Mario work, they can make 3D Donkey Kong work.
Yeah.
But let's move on to the next topics here. So, I'm gonna talk about the Switch Pro stuff, and I think that will sort of bleed into the Breath of the Wild situation. So basically, we mentioned at the beginning, but Nikkei has put out a report that the expectation for Switch is that they're going to produce 30 million units for this upcoming fiscal year, or this fiscal year. We've already started it. It started. We just completed the first month of April. Yeah, it started at the end of March. So April 2021 to March 2022 is this current fiscal year. Apparently, Nintendo plans to get out 30 million systems. I don't remember the number, but I want to say like for 2021 they got out like 25, 26 million or something like that. So
it was something close to that.
It was a lot.
Switch unit.
I remember
Switch
when they
units
first
2021,
announced back in like 2017 or 2018 that they were targeting 20 million for a year, and we were like, oh my god,
So
many.
apparently the projection was 26.5 million. So yeah, about halfway, halfway through 20. So yeah, around 20. I said, what did I say? 26 or something like that? 27?
I think you're pretty much spot on.
Yeah. So I don't know if I don't think we've gone to full update yet, because we're still waiting to get information in terms of how it sold January through March, right? But it's close to around that number. Point is, they're expecting to sell a few more than that this year, which is very, very interesting, because we're in a pandemic time. We are a recovering society. We're getting better because the vaccines are coming out, and we're getting through it. But it still has impacted things. There is still that big known issue of the semiconductor shortages, which impacts all sorts of different pieces of hardware that are basically computers. So that supposedly is going to make things harder. But here we're getting this report from the Cave that despite this challenging time where it's more difficult for Nintendo to manufacture Switches, their projection is even higher than a record year. What does Nintendo have planned? What on earth could Nintendo do to do that? Now, maybe they already had an expectation that this would be the case. Maybe that's why. Maybe they secured a lot of semiconductors for this reason, like ahead of time, because they knew that they were going to be putting out some big stuff, and they were able to project ahead of time that they were going to do really well. Maybe they saw where the direction things were headed during 2020. Yeah, during 2020, so they prepared themselves for the upcoming fiscal year. Because if you think about it, during the pandemic time, there wasn't really that much great content. Like, not saying it was bad, but you understand my point. I think most of you. There wasn't too much original, brand new games from Nintendo. A lot of it were ports and remasters and things of that nature.
It almost felt like a Wii U year. Almost.
But yeah, so it's strange that they did that well. And I think a lot of that does have to do with the pandemic, and we're still kind of going through that right now to some extent, so there could still be some benefit with that. But this time around, it seems like Nintendo's going to have a lot more compelling content. I mean, we're already doing pretty well. We opened up this fiscal year with new Pokemon Snap. Like, that's quite an opener, I would say. I think the game is already showing very early signs to be performing really, really well.
Yeah.
Like, I think I heard a number, like it's already doing like 4 or 5 times better than new Snap. I mean, original Snap, at least for the first few days.
Yeah.
So it's performing admirably. Monster Hunter Rise, it came out in March, so it came out to close the previous fiscal year, but I think I saw recently it's already sold over 6 million, which it puts it at around third of Monster Hunter World, which was on several different platforms, and it's only been out for around a month. It's crazy. Monster Hunter Rise is going to continue to sell throughout this fiscal year, so it's going to help out this fiscal year as well. People are going to be buying the Switch to play Monster Hunter. So that these games are already pushing the Switch pretty well. But, there's other things Nintendo can maybe do. Maybe they're going to have a price drop. Maybe they're going to release another revision. As this report says, a more powerful revision is apparently coming during this fiscal year. So those things could propel sales even more so. And then, obviously, we got to think about the games, right? So Pokemon Legends Arceus is slated for early 2022. I believe that the plan is to get that out before the end of the fiscal year. So I could see that coming out either February or March. So they could get a nice little final push with Legends Arceus, the first fully open world Pokemon game during that time. So that could offer a nice little boost at the end. But then supposedly there's some great plans for the second half of 2021. What could that be? Well, maybe it is the case that this Switch revision is going to make it out for the holiday. Like, if they're actually going to do this much, if they're actually going to sell 30 million, I feel like they need to be able to come out with this revision sooner than later. Like, if it comes out in March, like right at the end, like how many units could they reasonably get out? Like, if they're actually going to hit this 30 million, to me that suggests a very healthy situation where they are able to get out things when they want them to. So, this isn't what Nintendo has said officially yet, right? So we'll see. But if that's actually the case, I do think this is more siding with what Bloomberg has seemed to have been alluding to, that it is coming up for this holiday. And this is how it bleeds into Zelda. Because, well, I mean, if there's a Switch revision coming out for the holiday, and there's a history of Zelda games coming out to support systems, and right now the biggest known game that's probably going to be a big pusher of the Switch console is Breath of the Wild 2. What a game to bring out to showcase a 4K system, especially when it's already a franchise that's known to push hardware. So, I think the puzzle pieces are sort of coming together here. Now, I want to point out that I am biased because has been my prediction for a while and my gamble that we get both for the holiday. Because if I'm wrong about this, if we don't get Switch Pro or Plus, whatever you want to call it, and Breath of the Wild 2 for the holiday, I will be eating something disgusting from Breath of the Wild. That's gonna happen. Maybe a few other things. So I want this to come out for the holiday, like, for sure. But I do feel like there is a good argument to be made that it could happen then. So before we jump into the whole Zelda situation, I kind of want to get your thoughts on just that piece of information there in terms of 30 million Switches coming out and a more powerful Switch coming out, and then we'll talk into the Zelda stuff a little bit more. But just kind of that piece, what are you guys thinking?
To me, this screams two things. One is a strong lineup of heavy hitter games, and two, new hardware to get people excited. And like you said, I think we're all in agreement that we've all kind of been predicting Breath of the Wild 2, as well as the potential for Switch Pro to launch alongside it for this year. It makes so much sense. And I believe that to this day. I'm still sticking to my guns with that. I feel like the only reason that wouldn't happen would be because of some sort of unforeseen delay,
Right.
I mean,
but
COVID's a thing, so,
Yes. And there was just a state of emergency in Japan. They recently shut down the Nintendo World that was just open for a very short while out there. So yeah, the Nintendo's definitely feeling the effects of what's going on right now. But I still, like, that 30 million number still displays a level of confidence that they're able to meet the goals that they've kind of had in place for the rest of the year and the holiday. So yeah, I think I'm gonna go for broke and say that not only are we getting Zelda, but there's some other big heavy hitters that we just don't know about. Perhaps that new Donkey Kong game, maybe something else. Who knows? Like, we'll see. But that level of confidence tells me we're in for a really good holiday and early next year.
Yeah, I mean, to have the confidence to project 4 million more units or around there for a year right after their record year is crazy. Like, that's crazy because you don't overshoot goals that you tell like your investors or that you have in-house, because if anything you want to undershoot it so that if you sell more, then you're like, oh, look how amazing we did even better than projected. So for them to be like, you know what, not only are we gonna do as good as our best year so far, we're gonna do even better. Like, they gotta have something coming. Like, if it's not new hardware, there's gotta be like a price drop or like something. Like, there has to be something big. Maybe even both of those in order to get those numbers. Maybe even new hardware and a price drop on the old hardware, along with big heavy hitters like Breath of the Wild. Because 30 million is like DS and Wii numbers, like crazy, insane, like some of the best of any console.
If they
in a single
pull
year.
this off, I think Switch will become the best-selling console of all time. Because at that point, I think that what the Switch is,
it'd be like 110 million at
Right.
least.
Well, yeah, especially assuming that it might have two more years of a lifespan beyond the end of this. Yeah, you know.
Yeah. And now, in fairness, I think it's important to note that historically speaking, Nintendo's always been pushing like 2 systems at a time. Now they're just pushing 1. So if there is a time for Nintendo to have like their best-selling system of all time, it would make sense that it would be the time where they're focusing on one platform. But regardless, they are having records of the software sales and such. So I think they're definitely making up for that by having incredible sales. So, I do think there's a chance if they pull this off.
Yeah. And to your point, Brandon, about the price cuts, imagine this. Imagine we're getting both Breath of the Wild launching alongside a Switch Pro or Switch Plus this holiday. The regular Switch gets a price drop, and then we know that the Diamond and Pearl remake is coming out. That game will be a huge boost to Switch Lite sales, in my opinion.
Oh yeah,
I think that is a big selling point for the Switch Lite, and that's kind of like a 3-hit KO of getting people who are kind of on the fence with the Switch, but now the Switch got a price cut. The people who want a little bit more power from their console, and then the really casual people who just want to do portably with the Switch Lite, and they've got a killer title with a new Pokemon, or a remake of a classic Pokemon to play.
So let me throw out.
It would be nice if we got Switch Lite 150, normal Switch 250, then Switch Plus 350.
I think it's conceivable.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's definitely conceivable. Let me throw out a lineup for you. This may be insane. I mean, this may be crazy, but I don't think this is true. But let's just I'm just trying to think like how can Nintendo actually push 30 million, right? Like what kind of software could they have available to do that? Pokemon Legends Arceus, Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, to your point, that could really push Switch Lite sales this year. And then Breath of the Wild 2. Like those things could definitely, those are all like 10 plus million sellers. I think, right? Like that's pretty strong, but could they have more than that? So I guess one thing is like I do believe this Donkey Kong game is real, and if it's kind of like what we were talking about more on the 3D side of things, and they open up with like a DK rap and it goes viral, like that would be amazing. It would be sick. But I'm not sure it will come out this year necessarily, right? Like maybe it could. Like maybe it could be like a surprise big release. Like maybe Nintendo's 1-2 punch or 1-2-3 punch is Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, Donkey Kong, and Zelda, right? Like maybe, but I'm not convinced it's coming out this year, right? Like if it was a 2D style Donkey Kong game, maybe it's they can more easily fit it in. But I'll also tell you this, I think there is a new Metroid game coming out this year, and when I say I think, I very much believe it for a number of reasons. I've discussed a lot of them on the channel, but there are other reasons on top of that. Like it's that's coming out, but I also think it's like a 2D style game, right? So I'm not sure that's going to be like a big. It's not going to change things too much. Like I don't think a whole bunch of people are going to buy a Switch to play Donkey Kong. They play Metroid. I think it's going to be one of those things where people who have it will. Maybe some people who haven't gotten a Switch yet because of Metroid will. But my point is that it's not going to move the dial that much. It's still going to be an incredible game. I still think it's going to sell really well. It's just, it's not. There's only certain games that kind of really push hardware. Is my point. So we'll see with that. But if you consider that maybe we're getting a Fire Emblem remake this year, maybe a Kirby game, maybe a new Metroid game, and then Breath of the Wild 2 and Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, and potentially Bayonetta 3 or a new Monolith Soft game, like where do you fit in an Odyssey style Donkey Kong or something like that, right? Like I think something's got to give, but those are all options for this year is my point. And then when you look at the beginning of fiscal year, the beginning of 2022, but the end of this fiscal year, like you got Legends Arceus maybe, and there have been some suggestions that perhaps Splatoon 3 is an early 2022 release. What if they fit that into the end of the fiscal year, right? Like that's a lot of games that could push a lot of hardware. So there's a lot of things they could maybe do to push that hardware with the software, with price drops and a Switch revision. Like there's a lot they could do there. I think the Donkey Kong game, a Prime Trilogy maybe could be a great sort of showcase for a 4K system if they had a 4K sort of option there. And Bayonetta 3 and Monolith Soft, those are all games that they could use to sort of showcase this 4K system on top of Breath of the Wild 2. But so they have a lot of options. I think some of those games for sure come out later into 2022. But the point is, there's a lot of software they can maybe use for that.
Real quick, I just want to add, there's also the potential for maybe a new IP from Nintendo.
Yeah.
We recently got that really exciting, in my opinion, interview from Shuntaro Furukawa about how they're going to put a stronger focus on creating new IP, which is fantastic because for a long time, Nintendo they were, doing a lot of stuff with their well-known IP, but not creating a lot. But lately, from experimentation, we've gotten stuff like Splatoon, which is so cool and has become a huge hit, both as a Western release and a Eastern release. So there's also potential that we could be getting something new and exciting that we just weren't expecting at all,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we do know that the team that made ARMS, which is also responsible for Mario Kart 8, they haven't come out with a game since 2017. There was some DLC for ARMS that went beyond the initial release date, but still, we're in 2021 already. They are likely very deep into development for a game. We were talking about Mario Kart 9 earlier. That is obviously a strong candidate for what they've been working on, but, maybe the Mario Kart 9 is not coming out for a few more years, so maybe they're working on something else. I would love for Nintendo to revive a dead franchise, but there's another great option here, and maybe they're working on a new IP. So, and maybe it could be amazing. Nintendo has sort of revamped their online servers this year. And, between Monster Hunter Rise and this online update for Mario Party, perhaps they're doing some stress tests or trying to test things out, prepare. Maybe they have some big online multiplayer game that's coming out from that team, and we'll see it this year. Like, that's a whole other thing that could help to boost Switch sales as well. If it ends up being like a viral success, as maybe they're perhaps anticipating, that could be another thing that really pushes the hardware sales here.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know what it would be like. What's interesting about thinking about like new IPs from Nintendo, like you don't know what it is, right? It's an unknown quantity, so I don't know how excited I should be for it. But like Splatoon's awesome, right? Like imagine like before we knew about Splatoon, like it was Nintendo making a new IP. Okay, we'll see. But then when they first showed off Splatoon, when I first saw it, I wasn't immediately impressed. I didn't even think it was that big of a deal. Right? Mm-hmm. But then, I watched the trailer again and I was like, wait, hold on a second. This gameplay here seems pretty unique. You can like go into ink, which you can spray everywhere and paint the walls and go onto walls and above and jump out. Like, whoa, that's some gameplay that I've never heard of or seen before. This could be quite a unique and innovative shooting experience.
Yeah.
Once they showed off the treehouse, I was hooked. I was like, this is for me. I'm going to buy this day one. This looks amazing.
Well, Nintendo's so good at taking like a particular genre and just doing something so different that no other company is doing, so creative and weird. And as far as like a multiplayer online shooter, like who would have thought that, it'd be a game about a bunch of squids running around like this kind of like futuristic dystopian maps, squirting ink and stuff. It like Nintendo's first battle royale game was Tetris 99, which was the most like out there, it's simple but it's awesome. A fantastic game. So I love the idea of Nintendo tackling a new IP with a genre that maybe they don't have a really strong presence in, and just doing something really wacky with it and seeing if it sticks and becomes one of their lifelong big series.
Yeah. I'll throw out another potential new IP, Monolith Soft. There's a good chance that their new IP, which we know they've been working on for a few years thanks to job hires listings, like they have a new IP that's been in the works, unless it was canceled, but I think that's unlikely. Like that could theoretically be announced this year, and it could be a big deal. It could perhaps be a game that has MMO-like options, perhaps, right? If you go back to Xenoblade X, they kind of played around with that a little bit with the multiplayer there. Perhaps they're going to build on that now that Nintendo has better online servers. And given that it's a new IP, it may have far greater success than Xenoblade, and it could really explode. That's another potential new series that they could have on the horizon, and it could be a big deal. Yeah, for sure. Now, on the note of Monolith Soft, I do want to get into the job listings, because that ties into Zelda. I'll use that as a transitional point. But let me just check in with the chat real quick, and then we'll jump into that. Giancarlo, 30 million Switch is a lot. That's DS level sales. What could Nintendo be planning to achieve this, right? Kind of like a lot of things we sort of mentioned, like some new IPs, price drops, Breath of the Wild 2, Legends Arceus. Like there could be some big stuff on the horizon. Let's see here. Can't make this up. I wish King K. Rool came back. You and me both, buddy.
Heck.
You and me both, buddy.
He better be the villain, or at least in this.
Yeah, especially considering Smash Ultimate sort of repopularized King K. Rool. Maybe maybe they already knew that they were going to make a new Donkey Kong game, and King K. Rool would be a part of it. So they sort of used Smash Ultimate to kind of push King K. Rool a little bit, right? Because it came out in 2018.
By the time that game came out, they probably did know.
They might have, right? Because Odyssey was done, pretty much done going into the beginning of 2017. I think it's conceivable that they might have wanted to do that. I'm not saying it would have been a big point to do it, but maybe. But kind of looking here, Ronnie Fazio added me. I'd love to see Nintendo's take on the stealth genre. It could perhaps focus on a Ninja Chameleon. Ooh, a Ninja Chameleon. That could be really fun. Yeah.
See there.
Yeah, that would be really interesting to see for sure. But let's get into this sort of Monolith Soft situation. Actually, I think I see a comment that's kind of related to it. VG Buzz, with their ever-expanding hires for Zelda, do you think Monolith Soft could potentially work on a separate Zelda game to Breath of the Wild 2, maybe a remake? I don't think they would do a remake. I think remakes are handled by smaller studios usually, especially if it's already kind of like an established gameplay. But sometimes those studios do eventually get to work on their own games, like Grezzo, for example. I feel like Monolith Soft, they could definitely do like a Zelda spin-off. I 100% think that's a possibility. If you look at some of the pieces of concept art, maybe that is the case. And I'll also argue that this new IP, theoretically, could be a Zelda spin-off. Like, a Zelda spin-off could still be a new IP. For example, Smash Brothers, that's a spin-off. Mario Kart, that's a spin-off, but now they're their own franchises, right? Like, so conceivably, this new IP could still be like a Zelda spin-off. Not saying that's what it is. I'm just saying, like, theoretically, it could be, right? So, maybe down the line at some point, Monolith Soft does make some sort of maybe Dark Souls style or like online fantasy RPG using the Zelda universe. Like, those are both awesome options that I think they could kind of pull off. So, maybe. For sure. But on the note of Monolith Soft, let's now use this as an actual transitional point. We got news from Video Games Chronicle that Monolith Soft is making significant hires here. There are over 40 job openings and apparently 5 for the Legend of Zelda series. I tried to do some rough translations in my video earlier this week. I don't remember what I was, but basically programmers, designers, management stuff, like very generalized sort of things there, designers. It's not anything crazy, but I think the ultimate point I wanted to make earlier in the week was a lot of people saw this news and assumed, oh, they're just starting Breath of the Wild 2. We're never going to see this game. It's just not happening anytime soon. But that, well, maybe, right? I'm not saying that you're wrong necessarily, but it's
Awesome.
it's just one of several possibilities. So Here's the thing. Back in 2019, we got similar news of Zelda hires, okay? Yeah. Back in 2017, we got news of hires from Monolith Soft. Like, we're always going to get updates about Monolith Soft hiring continually. Monolith Soft has a long history of working on Zelda. They worked on Skyward Sword. They worked on Breath of the Wild. We know they're probably working on Breath of the Wild too. That's over a decade. So if this developer Monolith Soft consistently works on Zelda, and they're at a time in the year where they're like, all right, guys, it's time to have a revamp of our developers. It's 40 developers. It's 40 people they're hiring here. It's not just 5, just Zelda. It's across the board hires. Just 5 of the 40 are for Zelda. That's just 1/8. So to me, what this is more suggestive of is, okay, we are now going to expand overall across the board. And because we always work on Zelda, we do also have to expand on our Zelda team as we expand on our other teams as well. So there you go. That's pretty much what this tells me. They're just expanding to what they've always been working on. So to me, this doesn't tell us much about where they are in Zelda development. However, there is a rumor that's coming from Game Over Jesse that, and again, I'm not sure if I would qualify this rumor as super credible. If Game Over Jesse sees this or something, I'm sorry, maybe I'm mistaken. You report it as a rumor though, so take it with a grain of salt. But if this rumor is the case, the rumor is basically that localization for Breath of the Wild 2 is done. Now, the reason this is interesting is because if localization for Breath of the Wild 2 is done, then maybe these hires have more to do with the fact that Monolith Soft is already transitioning to their next sort of development cycle, right? Like, that's another consideration here, you know? So instead of the hires suggesting that Breath of the Wild 2 is not finished, it could mean the opposite, right? It could mean that they are finished and they're moving on to something else, right? Maybe some developers moved on, they're contracting others now. So, like, that's another possibility there. So, you know, I don't really take too much from this, but before we really dive into Zelda stuff here, I just want to get you guys' takes on this. Do you guys kind of agree with me, or do you see it a little differently, or is there something else you want to add to it?
There's another point is, even after Breath of the Wild released, they still worked on the game. Not only did they have the DLC, but they had tons of updates to the game engine in order to make it run better and things like that. There were always like patches and updates. It's not like Breath of the Wild came out and they were like, done, guys, let's go home.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, no. Like, they immediately started working on the DLC and the patches and probably even the next game pretty soon after. So
DLC in the next game was actually the first thing that came to my mind when I saw this. I don't read this at all as in like, oh no, like we're not getting Breath of the Wild 2 for a year and a half or 2 more years. I just took it as like, I took it as Breath of the Wild is pretty far in, and maybe they're prepping for whatever's coming next, which is completely normal. That's what they do, and the possibility of DLC work because they already experimented with it, and we already know it's something Eiji Aonuma's excited about and interested in with future Zelda titles. I could actually see there being more DLC, or at least grander DLC for the second game than we got for the first game.
Potentially. That's a good point, guys, that, you know, maybe they could be hiring for DLC. It's a whole other possibility, right? And it's also important to note that hires happen all throughout development. Like, seeing hirings doesn't mean that they're just getting started. You know, like, for example, we've been continually seeing more and more hires for Retro Studios. We know they started Metroid Prime 4 already a couple of years ago. That doesn't mean that they announced it and then waited 2 years and just hired talent for 2 years straight before they started. Like, no.
Yep.
the reason we're continually getting news of hires isn't because the game's just getting started. It's because hiring happens all the time. So, you know, I wouldn't be using this report as a cause for concern at all for how far in Breath of the Wild 2 is. But before we dive into those Zelda rumors I already sort of touched on to an extent, there is a super chat here from Taker610. Thank you very much. Let me go ahead and read that here. Andres is going to eat one of Maza's famous dishes. Perhaps if Breath of the Wild 2 does not come out for the holiday, perhaps I will have to eat something dubious. Perhaps. But let's see here. The Breaks and Kids, Zelda 3D all stars with a Zelda 1 and 2 Game Watch. Huh, maybe. Jean-Carl, if localization is done on Zelda Breath of the Wild 2, could this mean the game releases this holiday season? Yeah, that's what it would mean, pretty much, I would say. Yeah. So, you know, on that note, the rumor talks about a number of things. So definitely check out Game Over Jesse's channel. He talks about it there. I see Nintendo Prime in the chat. What's up, buddy? Nintendo Prime was also talking about Game Over Jesse's rumor as well. So, you know, this rumor basically is that localization seems to be pretty much done. And that would basically mean the game is coming fairly soon. When you consider these reports of a Switch Pro potentially coming out to support these 30 million Switches that are coming out, that's a lot. And it, to me, supports the idea of it coming out for the holiday, as I think Bloomberg has been sort of alluding to. And Breath of the Wild 2 makes sense as that perfect holiday game to support the system. So I don't know if this rumor is true entirely, but it does seem to sort of line up a little bit with this news of the Monolith Soft hires potentially, right? So there's obviously a lot of different interpretations there, but I do feel like if Breath of the Wild 2 is coming out for this holiday, them being almost done or done with localization around this time isn't really a stretch.
Yep. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, if you're done with the localization, that means you have to be done with every single bit of text in the entire game, every single cutscene in the entire game. Like, the only thing you would be doing is, like, optimization at this point.
Yeah.
Or, like, you know, things like that. Because if you change anything, then you're not done. You have to change it again. So if they're saying they're done, then they have to be, like, in the optimization stages or something.
Yeah. There's also no denying that the pandemic has slowed down development for Nintendo. So just like expanding a team to meet deadlines, like, hey, we need a couple extra people on board because we want to hit this holiday deadline, is totally a possibility as well. You know, sometimes they just need a few more hands.
Yeah,
you know?
It could be the case. I do think we should talk about another rumor going back to Samus Hunter, though, we talked about earlier in the week. So basically, when I had that discussion with Samus Hunter, she told me that from what she's heard, she doesn't know if it's going to be coming for the holiday or not. But the impression is that it's for sure coming out by the end of the fiscal year. Like that, like for sure. But it does seem like Nintendo's desire, what they want to happen is for it to come out for the holiday. Like, it makes more sense for it to come out for the holiday, but if for whatever reason they can't make it, then they would push it to perhaps March 2022. But you see, for me, my thing about that is that I feel like Legends Arceus is right now being positioned as that sort of game to come out to close the fiscal year. So if it's coming out March 2022, which I do think that early 2022 release window suggests, then they sort of begs the question, where is Breath of the Wild 2 going to come out? Because I don't see it coming out in the same month. It either comes out before or afterwards, which is kind of why I asked Samus Hunter if she sees it coming out within this fiscal year, if we could go beyond it, right? So the impression is that it is going to be for this fiscal year. And, you know, I've heard from other places that that's the plan, sometime within this fiscal year. So, you know, I do feel like if they already have some games between either Splatoon 3 or Legends Arceus already kind of positioned for that early 2022 sort of window, then the process of elimination leaves Breath of the Wild 2 for the holiday. Assuming that it does come out this fiscal year and those games do come out during that time, right? So, you know, it just kind of strengthens my belief that that's when it's going to happen. Hard to say for sure, obviously, but that is definitely what I'm starting to believe when you consider this rumor of the localization, the Monolith Soft tires perhaps suggesting that maybe they're already moving on to something else potentially, and everything else with the Switch Pro and such. Like, I just feel like it's not confirmed, obviously, but you know, if we're gonna get a big E3 blowout for Breath of the Wild 2, the game's coming out soon. Like, they're not. It may not come out for this holiday, but the game's not that far off.
Yeah.
I do agree with Pokemon Legends Arceus likely being like March, because after the fiscal year ends, there's usually like a month or two that's much slower than before. Like, usually if you want to get out a big game, you get it out before the end of the fiscal year, like in March, because you don't usually release like a big, huge open world game like in April or May. Like, usually those months are kind of slower, and then you build up to E3, and then things get a bit faster after that. But there's usually a bit of slowness right after the end of the fiscal year. So it would be weird to have a really big game at that time. It's not like completely impossible, it just would be strange.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard. I don't know. I can't imagine Breath of the Wild 2 being in that window. Like you said, it's like the thought of like cramming those two titles right next to each other just doesn't seem like a smart business decision. It just doesn't really line up with the way Nintendo does things. I can't see it happening later than December.
Well, let me throw an idea at you guys, though. We sort of touched on it already, but like, is it possible that when they say early 2022 for Legends Arceus, that doesn't mean by March, right? Like, what? Like, is it possible that maybe it means like May or June?
Those are really weird. It's just weird times to launch that game.
Yeah, I feel like it's got to be November, December, or March, and it's not going to be March unless it gets pushed to the following holiday.
Well, but for Legends Arceus though, like that, they're saying,
Arceus.
Yeah, okay. Legends Arceus, like early 2022, right? Like, so, like, I mean, you know, there's always room for interpretation when they just say early 2022, right? But to me, when you just look at the history of like announcement to release windows for mainline Pokemon games, it's always under a year. This one, I'm assuming, is going to be slightly over a year. So, you know, like, how much longer are they going to have us wait for Legends Arceus, which is probably not even going to be, you know, it's not even Generation 9. Like, there's still a chance Generation 9 comes up for the holiday next year, too. So, like, if you move up Legends Arceus, then Gen 9's, like, there's no way that comes out next year. It may not come out next year, but the point is that, you know, that's a whole other reason to maybe consider that it wouldn't come out that much later into the year.
Yeah, if you want to sell 30 million units this fiscal year, it would make sense to get that game out by this fiscal year.
You can't.
It's gonna sell units.
You can't just rely on Breath of the Wild 2 for that. You need more.
Yeah, and that's I mean, you know, like we said before, like with Breath of the Wild, if it's not out this year, and it's not the March title, it's later than that. What is it that they could potentially have up their sleeve to meet that 30 million threshold? Because just new, exciting Switch Plus, Switch Pro isn't going to push 30 million units.
Right.
There has to be that killer app.
So let's kind of touch on that, right? So, like, potentially the new IP from that Mario Kart ARMS team, maybe, right? Potentially a new IP from Monolith Soft. But these are new IPs. You're never really sure how well those are going to succeed, you know, until they actually happen. And then there's also the Donkey Kong game, right? But then Donkey Kong also hasn't proven to be like a huge system seller. It may become that, right? But we don't know that yet. Nintendo doesn't know that yet. Like, I think if they were perhaps planning on pushing that much hardware, they might need something else, right? So, you know, something they know will do it. So that to me, yeah, exactly. Something established like Pokemon, like Animal Crossing, like Smash, like Mario Kart, like Zelda, or Super Mario. Like those are the franchises Nintendo will like push, will perform really well. Yeah. So you know, Breath of the Wild 2 kind of makes a lot of sense. But if it's not that, I mean, Fire Emblem Remake, I don't think would do it. A new Kirby game, I don't think would do it.
Heck no.
So it's just like, you know.
Yeah, like I said, like the Diamond and Pearl remake, I think that'll push some Switch Lite units. I don't think it's gonna like make them explode, but I think it will push Switch Lite units. And then, I mean, Pokemon Legends Arceus will definitely move units, but there's no way they're banking all of that on a game that is probably coming out in March, the earliest. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So-
feel like there's like 2 games I can think of that they might have ready, and like one of them could be Mario Kart 9. Like maybe
Yeah.
there is a Mario Kart 9, and then
Yeah.
the other one is maybe they're not actually working on Donkey Kong at all, and they are working on like Odyssey 2 and that
Yeah.
releases.
Yeah.
That could
Yeah.
push a lot of systems.
Yeah, the big three.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But other than that, I can't really think of anything that's big enough to push 30 million units.
Right. So I guess the interesting thing is that Super Mario and Mario Kart 9, based off rumors, right, from people that we think are fairly credible, does not seem to be in the cards
Right.
for this year. So, what is it? Well, the process of elimination suggests Breath of the Wild 2, Legends Arceus, and Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl. Maybe somehow squeeze in Splatoon 3 in there. Maybe. But doesn't seem super likely that all of that comes within this fiscal year. Maybe it's possible. Like maybe that's Splatoon 3 come out in March, and then like Legends Arceus comes out for the Pokemon anniversary in February or something like that, right?
Maybe.
Like maybe. But yeah, I don't know. I think it just kind of goes back to my prediction. Breath of the Wild 2 does kind of make sense for that holiday, but obviously we'll have to wait and see. Depending on the pandemic and stuff, things could get delayed. But let's move on here because there's a few other sort of things to discuss with the rumors. Kind of going back to the Game Over Jesse thing, right? There is another part to that rumor beyond just Breath of the Wild 2 perhaps being almost done with localization. And that's that there is something to this Ocarina of Time trademark that's going on. Now, the names that were dropped off based off of memory from the video, it's either Ocarina of Time or Ocarina of Time HD. Like, those are the things that are being played around with the marketing team. Not Ocarina of Time 3D. So, it does seem like there could be some sort of plan to have an Ocarina of Time come out. Now, the question is, what would that be? Considering that Breath of the Wild 2 is, even if it's not coming out this year, it's like, it's going to be shown off this year, discussed this year, it's not too far off. I don't think Nintendo's going to have like an Ocarina of Time remake like coming out soon and they're going to be showing it off, because that would take away from Breath of the Wild 2, and when would they be able to develop that, So I don't think that's the case. I think what makes more sense is there's probably some sort of HD remaster of the game. Maybe it's maybe they take the 3DS version and they turn that into HD, right? They just upscale that, right? Or maybe it's the N64 version and it's just simply like 3D All-Stars. That's my sort of interpretation of that if it ends up being the case. But what do you guys sort of make of this potential of an Ocarina of Time something being on the horizon?
Yeah.
I think it's coming. We're at a point now where we can play like pretty much all our favorite 3D Mario games for the most part on the Switch. Zelda's the other big series, one of the most beloved series, and a game like Ocarina of Time is to this day considered one of the greatest games ever made and one of the most beloved games in Nintendo's
Heck yeah,
library.
it is.
I think Nintendo knows the power of that title, and just throwing that on their hybrid console, allowing players to play it where they want, when they want. I really hope it's an HD port of the 3D version, the Ocarina of Time 3D. Obviously, they wouldn't keep that branding, as the Switch does not have stereoscopic 3D. But I hope they at least
They're
use
coming out with a 3D Switch revision.
You never
Oh,
know.
God.
Get the slider
Yeah.
on there. Glasses for the TV mode.
Maybe.
Glass free for portable.
What if? Who
But,
needs 4K? Just give us 240p. It'll be fine.
The thing is, if they just port the N64 game and upres it to HD, I'll be a little bit bummed just because the 3DS version is so much better. Like, they just did so much tweaking, quality of life tweaking,
Oh,
not just visual wise, like just the way you interact with the menus. I mean, just think of the iron boots in the water temple, how obnoxious that is. in the original game, hitting start,
Yeah.
putting your items, going out, and so.
Yeah, so the counter argument to that, though, is that there was also a remaster of Mario 64 on the DS, and when they made 3D All Stars, they did it based off the original.
Yes.
Technically, I feel like the graphics were almost worse on that version.
There are a lot
I
of,
didn't really like the changes.
yeah,
Good
there are
point.
a lot of
Very good point.
that are the 3D or the DS version, the lesser version of Mario 64's.
As a
But I
kid,
mean,
I was like, no, math. This one has 150 stars. It has new worlds. It has mini games. It has more characters, and it's portable. So my brain was like, no, but I understand your point. Especially because artistically it is kind of different as well, and if you're talking about like celebrating the franchise, you probably want to replicate the original more, at least when it came to 3D All Stars. So that's maybe that's I guess another potential counter argument, though, that they might want to sort of celebrate the history of Zelda and just remaster the original. But to your point, though, the Ocarina of Time 3D remake, it was remade in a way to sort of honor the initial art style of it, just more appropriately realized. So,
it actually looked better and not worse than the original.
Yeah. So, I do think that there's a better chance that we see that one remastered than the chances we had for the 64 DS of Mario.
I think the reason you would do the original would be just because they already have the emulator. You don't have to port it, you just have to emulate it, which is a million times easier.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's just there's so much of a more superior version out there with that 3DS version that wouldn't be too much work. It'd still be a lot more work compared to how simple it is to do the emulation, but it still is not like crazy amount of work.
Another thing too with the Mario 3D All Stars, just to keep in mind, maybe this doesn't have anything to do with it, but I mean that from what I was reading, that game had roughly a 6-month kind of development cycle for it to get the 3D All Stars ready at a time when the world was in chaos and the whole world was shut down. So, I mean, obviously there was a lot of delays and we didn't get a normal direct. There was a lot of corners that had to be cut last year. It's not as bad now. I don't know how much that would affect the development of a Ocarina of Time port or a Majora's Mask port, something of that nature. But I mean, they went really big with the 3D world and Bowser's Fury, and that got pushed a little bit. They went really big with that, so I don't know. I feel like they'd be a little bit more willing to go big with ports of Ocarina of Time than Mario 64 for some odd reason.
I think Ocarina of Time 3D would sell a lot better than just porting the N64 version, because I think that would genuinely get people hyped, because that game actually looks pretty good if you run it in the Citra, even without upgrading the textures or doing literally anything to it. Just running it in HD looks great. And imagine that if they redid the textures, or if they just used they probably have HD assets, HD versions of the assets on hand, considering they keep every asset they've ever created all the way back to the N64 days.
Yeah, I feel like I read something that Grezzo has HD assets for Ocarina of Time 3D already, that they had already had HD assets. I feel like I read something about that.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool if that's the one they end up doing. I don't know. Because there's a lot of things that are rumored right now, right? There's Ocarina of Time. I don't think Majora's Mask is actually rumored. But there is Phantom Hourglass that's rumored, and then there's Twilight Princess HD and Wind Waker HD, and that's coming from some incredible places. I think Andy Robinson. So I don't really know what to make of all these potential Zelda releases. It's hard for me to believe that all of it comes out this year.
Yeah. Some of it might be pushed to next year.
Yeah.
Also, I'll add this: if it is just an eShop drop, if Ocarina of Time is just an eShop release, no physical edition, I am much more inclined to believe that it's just going to be an up-resed port of the N64 Classic, if it's a straight eShop drop.
Yeah, my initial thought was that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's the most likely thing, just because of how many different Zelda options they have.
Mhm.
And it's just the easiest. Like, I feel like they could get that all done in like less than a month.
But also,
with
like,
a
you
very
know,
small team.
if you're gonna just have a simple emulated Ocarina of Time from N64 added to the eShop, at that point maybe just also do Majora's Mask, right?
Yeah.
True.
So you
And
know, it's hard to say.
Don't put a 3-month limit on it.
So another possibility is that what's going to happen is that Nintendo's going to start to release more legacy content going beyond just Zelda stuff, right? Like maybe the reason why 3D All-Stars was a temporary thing is because they actually have plans to have them be released separately in some way. So maybe Nintendo's going to bring back virtual consoles to some extent, you know, go beyond just the online, the NES and SNES online we have for Nintendo Switch Online. Like maybe some of the more modern games will be available for separate individual purchases. And that could include the likes of Ocarina of Time, Mario 64, Galaxy, and other stuff like that. Like maybe that's what's in mind here.
Yep.
And if that's the case, I would love it if they also had F-Zero GX. So just put that out. Even I'll take like just an upscaled F-Zero GX. I'll take that. I'll be fine with that.
Yeah.
As long as it has multiplayer. If they found a way to pull off online, that'd be interesting. But I don't really. The way F-Zero GX is, I don't. You would have to it would have to be like reworked to really get an online sort of going for that. At least like kind of like a Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition style remaster for them to get an online sort of working for that, I think.
Would they? I mean, they have online for NES and SNES games.
Yeah,
obviously online didn't even exist then.
Well, the thing is that the game is not designed to have multiplayer with 30 cars in it.
Yeah.
So that's
but they might have like limited, like you can like just have 4 players. Just
no,
because that's how they do like the NES. No, I mean with comms, obviously with comms.
Yeah.
Like literally the same experience as your local play, but now it's online. I mean that's what they did.
If it was a remaster, yeah, I could see that. But I guess it's just, I don't know.
No, I mean they already have done it with other games.
Right, I know what you mean on with the
so
Nintendo Online games.
They
The
exact same thing that they've already done.
Well,
I feel like that's not crazy.
Here's my only counter to you, Brandon, is that, and this is just a guess on my part, is that I feel like if Nintendo brought Nintendo 64 and GameCube games to the Switch, it wouldn't be in the form of their current online service that they have.
Okay.
I just feel like with the $20 annual subscription, like it just doesn't make sense, and I don't think having subscription tiers makes sense. What I'd love to see for them, and I did a video on this last year, is they add Game Boy and Game Boy Colors to that, keep it at the $20 a year, add Game Boy and Game Boy Color games, and then maybe a section in the eShop or just another app entirely that is kind of a virtual console shop that you can buy individually the Nintendo 64 games and GameCube, whatever. And in that case, if you're able to purchase those individually, obviously it wouldn't make sense for them to rework online multiplayer into F-Zero GX, but it just seems like from a business standpoint, it's great for us gamers to be able to pick and choose out of a list of great 64 games and GameCube games that we want on our Switch, and Nintendo's making money off of each sale, you know.
I got an idea, and it's crazy. It's crazy, but I'm just put it out there. What if this rumored collaboration between Nintendo and Microsoft is actually some sort
of madman
Game Pass like service? But we've talked about before how, like, if they were to put Game Pass or xCloud on the Switch to some capacity, it would have to be a greatly adapted version because there's a lot of games that, you know, would probably some sort of conflict of interest because of the other games already available on the Switch eShop, and plus not every game could run on Switch, so it'd have to be streamed and things of that nature. So maybe it's a highly adapted version that has basically mostly just Microsoft stuff, maybe some other select third-party things, but to bolster that lineup, this is a special Nintendo Microsoft collaboration where that's where they put the legacy games. They go beyond just the 2D stuff. That's where they put the N64, the GameCubes, the Wiis. Put it all on this special Nintendo Pass that has Microsoft games in it. Again, I understand it's crazy, but you know, if you wanna spice up the package a little bit, if you can't have all the normal offerings of Game Pass, that's what you do.
That would be awesome, and I think if that were the case, then I don't think what Brandon was suggesting would be unrealistic. I could see them throwing in a little bit extra development into some of those older multiplayer games for some online modes.
Sure, but if they do that, they're also not going to just come out with like 50 like legacy Nintendo games.
Right.
It's going to be a more smaller lineup.
Yeah, a more curated list. Yeah.
Yeah. I suggested the idea, and I would love to have it online in it as well. Like, yeah, for sure, absolutely. Imagine being able to play Soul Calibur 2 online with Link. That'd be nice. Although that's a Namco thing, so maybe we wouldn't see that on the pass. But let's see, what other Double Dash online, right? That'd be pretty neat.
Well, now that you mention it too, Andres, like, you know, we were talking about big things that Nintendo could have planned for the holiday and before the end of the next fiscal year. Who knows what Nintendo and Microsoft have up their sleeves? It could be something as simple as a Smash character. It could be something much more like to the scale of like a Game Pass announcement, and that's something that could definitely bolster sales and get people excited.
For sure, yeah, it's a good point that could be another one of those things that's what they're sort of thinking that could help push more hardware sales. And to that idea, I'll suggest a tertiary option, which we've also discussed before. But what if we just get like a new Banjo-Kazooie game? You know.
Yeah, don't do that to me, man.
Yeah,
I pray for it every night before I go to sleep.
I don't really. I feel like maybe what makes the most sense is like some sort of Halo thing, but we'll see for sure. Yeah. But let me check on the chat here real quick. Aaron Curdy provided a super chat. Thank you very much, Aaron. I'm worried Breath of the Wild 2 is not going to have dungeons. I'll tell you this, I don't think it's going to have shrines. Because in the trailer, the shrines are gone. Something happened to them. They're going to have something to replace that.
Mm-hmm.
But I also am of the frame of mind that there will be dungeons. I don't have any concrete info or anything like that. I just feel like dungeons are happening. I feel like the Zelda team is fairly reactive to fan feedback. And you could argue a criticism or simply a common observation is that it'd be nice if they brought back the classical style dungeons in the next Zelda game. Now, when I say classical style dungeons, they're still going to be within that Breath of the Wild style kind of world, so that still offers up a lot of unique gameplay possibilities. So maybe there'd be more hybridized, I suppose, because, you know, well, they wouldn't be quite the same, but they would still be like heavily themed with their own story within them and very catered. And yeah, because of that, there wouldn't be as many potentially, but they could still offer a similar amount of gameplay and depth, just kind of more condensed in particular areas.
If you go back to 2014 and you look at Game Awards, there's a part of the footage where they're playing Zelda Wii U for the first time, and they're like, oh, this area looks kind of special. I think there's a dungeon nearby. And obviously, that part of the game doesn't exist anymore. There's no dungeon there.
Yeah.
Obviously, it seemed like their original plan was to make dungeons be more like you just come across a dungeon, like an actual dungeon that's built into the environment, not just a moving dungeon that you can only access a certain way. Like, it definitely seemed like that's what they were going for originally, so maybe they'll go back and look at those ideas and figure out a way to make them work.
That might be the case, but I think it's also possible that at the time they were just going to refer to that as a dungeon because that was just the closest thing they could say at the time that we would understand.
Yeah.
Maybe, but there's like nothing in the game that makes sense for it to be referenced as a dungeon.
Right, we didn't see any signs of shrines in early footage either. To your point.
No, they didn't exist at the time.
I always felt like the lack of traditional dungeons in Breath of the Wild was more a result of just development time and needing to get the game out. I feel like the Divine Beasts are kind of the dungeons of the game, but obviously they're very samey. The bosses in them are all kind of reskins of one another, and that's like another element of like just not having time. Like I feel like the bosses not being unique to each one was a result of that as well.
Yeah.
It is crazy how the game...
It's just not one of those staples that like no one who played Zelda was like, man, I just really wish there was no dungeons in this game. There were other things that they really wanted, like world. I wish I could go anywhere I wanted.
Voice acting,
voice acting, a lot like
more
armor.
Weapons, armor, yeah, all of which
like,
they added.
Like all, but who's like, nah, I just don't. I want Zelda, but no dungeons. So I think it was just like time constraints and like like this was a huge task with a huge team developing a brand new physics engine. They had to cut some things.
Yeah, I think the intent was to always, I don't know, maybe not always, but obviously they went with the shrines and the guardians. But I do think maybe, because of the scope of the game and such, and to your point, perhaps some time-related things, they did not have very catered dungeons. And I'll say that some of my favorite things about the dungeons isn't just the dungeons themselves, but it is like that special, unique, epic boss. It's sort of a build-up to, and that's just like a magical thing of the Zelda games. And I'll even say that Skyward Sword sort of started to lose that a little bit for me, because they had they had a lot of repeat fights. You fought the Scorpion at least twice. You fought the giant monster thing of Demise several times. You fought Girahim several times, and they were variations, but ultimately very similar. So there wasn't as much unique boss designs in Skyward Sword compared to, say, something like Twilight Princess, which had a very unique boss design per dungeon. Yeah. So I feel like they need to go back to that for sure. I think obviously the maybe
and mini bosses too. Don't forget mini
bosses are important. There are some incredible mini bosses if we go throughout Zelda history. For example, in Twilight Princess, the Arbiter's Grounds had the demon? The thing with the demon sword. I forget the name of it, but that one was really cool for sure. Dark Link from Ocarina of Time is a staple, right? Well, I mean, it's staple, but it's one that everyone discusses. Like, so, I would love for them to kind of go back that to extent. But there's also something else to consider here. One great element to the shrines is that because there was 120 of them, not counting the Guardians, that offered a lot of content to fill up the world. So if you get rid of that, what are they going to do to fill up the world? They're going to have to think of something. It wouldn't surprise me if they still bring back mini dungeons. Like, they still have the main dungeons. Maybe they have more than just 4. Maybe there's 8, or maybe there's still 4, but they're like really big, massive ones, right? So they still have those classical style dungeons, but they still have mini dungeons spread throughout as well. Maybe it's not 120 this time around. Maybe it's only like 50 or 60 or something. But between that and more villages and more unique side quests and things in that nature and more in-game events and the big dungeons, that all together fills out the world quite nicely. And there's a lot more variety than Breath of the Wild.
Well, something cool that they could do with Breath of the Wild too is that obviously this game is a much darker tone than the first game, and we're witnessing the return of Ganondorf. What changes are going to happen to Hyrule, we don't know yet, but certainly there's going to be some changes to this land. They could thematically make dungeons like not like holy places like in the previous titles, but actually bad places
Very dark.
Get like resurrecting these, dark guardians of these dungeons or whatever. But there could be some pretty dark thematic stuff that involves the dungeons that you have to go and cleanse or whatever.
It's an interesting idea for sure. I I don't want every single dungeon to be super like dark and spooky
Right.
entirely. Like I want some variety. Like actually, I mean, when I think about like Ocarina of Time, like okay, so the Deku Tree, that was pretty dark. The Doggo's Cavern, that was pretty dark. They had different feelings, but they were pretty dark. Maybe Jabu Jabu's Belly was like the least dark of the first three, I guess. Right? Like
It felt pretty dark.
You're inside. Yeah, there's like
very cramped
parasites everywhere. It was still very scary. But then the Forest Temple had an entirely different feel. The Forest Temple was like one of the best dungeons in Zelda, and I think that the music and the background and the ghosts, like obviously it was spooky, for sure. I can only imagine what they could do with a modern like iteration of that. But then the Fire Temple, I don't know, maybe that one was like a little bit less on the darker side because, well, it was brighter, but also there was a lot of Gorons in there they could interact with, so you felt less isolated, even though they were in jail cells. Water Temple, you did sort of explore around a little bit with Ruto, which actually I also think helps out the Jabu Jabu one as well to feel like less isolated. I think that's part of the thing. When you're kind of exploring some of these dungeons with someone else, it takes away from that, isolation, which does add to kind of like the fear element a little bit. Spirit Temple and Shadow Temple were pretty dark, I would say, especially the Shadow Temple. And then Ganon's Castle was crazy. Although the Ice Cavern, though, which was more of like a mini dungeon, that one was just super cool. That was it was like a very mystical, sort of strange cavern with weird magical things and crystals. It was just interesting. I would like to see a lot more like mini dungeons like that, actually. Like very customized dungeons that, if you don't have a temple that's going to that theme, have a mini dungeon sort of play to that theme. That'd be really nice to see.
And it doesn't have to just be like, when I say dark too, I don't mean just like looks wise. It could be just lore too, like a place that has like a dark background to it,
like the Well of Truth.
Like the Well of Truth,
which has blood on the walls and chains of people who were tortured.
That is the scariest place in Zelda.
Hidden rooms of skulls on them. Yeah.
That mini boss
in the hands.
A lot of it ties to like the Civil War, where I think a lot of like Sheikah were murdered and stuff. Some theories,
it's I don't know. Dungeons are able to do something so creative that really lends itself to the Breath of the Wild format. I mean, even Skyward Sword has one of my favorite dungeons of all time, the Ancient Cistern, which is kind of that like holy temple, but you have that part where you like descend down into this like spooky crypt with like the undead bokoblins, and it's almost like this heaven and hell dynamic that's really cool.
Yeah.
I love that dungeon.
I just love to see especially because the art style is so rad. Like dungeons are something I want them so bad, and unique bosses.
Yeah, for sure. Unique bosses. Absolutely. I still want more overall bosses. And there's some great ideas in Breath of the Wild. I think you should maintain those, but try maybe find a healthier balance with the unique bosses in the dungeons and the dungeons themselves as well, for sure.
I mean, that is a really exciting thing about the sequel, because even though it took Breath of the Wild so long to come out, it still feels like there's so many areas where they didn't have enough time. But now they're taking like so much time for a sequel that I feel like they finally have the time to implement all those ideas and expand upon them.
It could be like the best game of all time. Like,
dude, I'm so
as close as Breath of the Wild might be, like this sequel has so much potential to take all the amazingness of Breath of the Wild and then sort of clean up the holes, right? Give it more density, give more unique side quests, more enemy variations, perhaps a better final boss, perhaps a better told story. And all of a sudden you have like the perfect game, right? Like Breath of the Wild had some issues, but overall, like I think across the board, everyone thinks it's a masterpiece.
Yeah, masterpiece.
So, it would be incredible if they could do something like that. I do wonder what they're going to do to make the world feel fresh. Like, are we actually going to be in Hyrule? Like, according to AJ Numa, we will be. So, we'll see, but maybe he didn't really mean it. I don't know. But I think we're going to find out this June. But continuing on with the chat here, And guys, we're kind of like, reaching the end of the podcast. If you have any questions or points you want us to get to, this is your chance. Ella Schmidt, if you could see one game at E3 other than something Zelda related, what would you want to see? So, in terms of what I want to see, definitely want to see Metroid, which I think will be there. I do think there'll be an Ubisoft game at E3 as well. I think maybe, I think there were some interviews suggesting that they would do the Mario Rabbids Kingdom battle thing. Yeah, I feel like we could maybe see that. Obviously, I want to see Donkey Kong for sure, and then yes, I know Zelda. But going beyond those things, like what I really want that isn't maybe necessarily rumored or anything like that, F-Zero. I'd love to see if I saw a trailer for a brand new F-Zero, I would scream and maybe cry at the same time. I would just be so hyped. Because I already know we're getting Metroid and Donkey Kong. Those are gonna excite. Those are gonna make me really happy. For sure. But if we're talking about something else, right? That. Beyond that, Star Fox or Kid Icarus also would give me similar levels of hype.
Yeah, for me, there's three things. One is the impossible. You mentioned it earlier, and that's Banjo-Kazooie 3, Nintendo collaborating with Rare, and that being the big Microsoft thing. Yeah, I'd be in tears. I'd just be on my hands.
My head would explode.
Praying to the gaming gods and thanking them. Metroid obviously is the other big one. Anything Metroid, whether it's a brand new 2D Metroid, a new tease at Metroid Prime 4, though I think that's unlikely, or Prime Trilogy would be really hype for me. And then the other is Bayonetta 3. That's a game I really want to see. I'm a big Bayonetta fan.
I feel like we will.
Yeah, it's been a long time now.
The director said we're gonna get news, or he wants to share news this
year. He wants to share news this year.
We're better than E3.
I think there's a chance it comes out this year too. I think if the Switch Pro is coming up this year for the holiday, I feel like you need more than just Breath of the Wild 2 to showcase that system. I feel like a Bayonetta 3 would be an ideal game to do that.
Well. Be a cool one to in December or something like that.
Yeah, maybe Breath of the Wild 2 comes out in November and then Bayonetta 3 in December. Yeah.
But I'm the thing with Bayonetta 3 is that obviously I'm a big fan of the first two games, but it's been this is a long development period for a Bayonetta game. It makes me wonder if they're trying to do something a bit more ambitious for the series, and it's going to be different than what we've come to see with the first two games.
I don't know. It's going to be interesting for sure. The Platinum games, a lot of them, they do a lot. All the games always boil down to some sort of very fluid, fast-paced, challenging hack and slash, but they usually have something surrounding that, right? For example, Nier Automata, there was, it's this dystopian world, and then there's the flying segments, right? And then for Astral Chain, you have all the Astral Chain mechanics, right? So it does make, and
the
there's
detective stuff as well.
So yeah, and then 104 101 with all of the bunch of heroes there. So maybe they're going to do something different with Bayonetta 3 this time.
What I really hope it is that it's something a little bit more persistent and less mission based. Like the first world. Or not necessarily though, but the first Devil May Cry, that one's not mission based. It takes place in that
just
castle.
A continuous adventure.
Yeah, even Astral Chain is is more.
So maybe more like a Metroidvania sort of thing, or a Dark Souls sort of thing.
Yes, all of that. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's what I'd love to see. I think the mission-based formula works really well for it, but if they went a little bit more persistent, I think that would be really cool.
So the thing about that, and I haven't played through the entirety of the Bayonetta games yet. I know I should. Mm-hmm. But with Bayonetta, they have these big epic showcase moments, right? Where you're falling down thousands and thousands of feet, and you're on this piece of rock, and you're fighting all these enemies, right? Or you're flying through the sky, and there's all sorts of demons coming at you, kind of almost like a Star Fox sort of situation, right? But demons instead of aliens. Like, they do these special things that might not be possible with that style of gameplay, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's impossible, actually, but, like, if you have, like, this continuous, like, world, to have those sort of scripted moments, there would have to be some serious workarounds there, you know?
Yeah. That's why I'm saying, like, it doesn't have to be completely open world / persistent, but maybe a little bit more. Maybe make missions longer and more open. You know, a
Okay.
little bit less linear.
Sure, maybe.
You know, yeah. But yeah,
I
just
do,
to see
I
some.
do like the idea of a Metroidvania sort of style world to explore for Bayonetta, though. That'd be
Yeah,
pretty
it's
cool.
that combat system. I think that'd be really fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, what about you, Brandon?
I want to see something from Monolith Soft. I actually, not that I don't want to see Xenoblade 3, it's just that I
do.
really, really want to see what they're doing with this new IP a bit more. Because we've gotten a lot of Xenoblade content. You've gotten the original, got X, we've gotten 2, we got Torna. I want to see what else they can do outside of Xenoblade.
Yeah.
Although I wanted Xenoblade 3 immediately after that, but for a bit, you know, I want them to try something new.
Yeah.
So I'd love to see that at E3.
Yeah, I think anything Monolith is going to be hype at this point.
Oh yeah. They were my favorite people at Nintendo.
Yeah, I'm really excited for what it is they're working on. I want to see that for sure. Especially if it's like my idea that has like MMO like elements to that. Like, it'd be interesting to see like what they could do with that. I could see myself getting addicted.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
If
love
they ever
whatever.
make an X2, it should be MMO-ish.
They're also
Yeah.
they're also a company that could be a good showcase for new Switch hardware.
Oh
Just
yeah.
Yep.
how ambitious their
Yep.
worlds are and
Can we
stuff.
finally get a Xenoblade game that's above 720p, please?
Yeah, you know, what's
Yeah.
interesting is that like it's been a while since we've gotten announcements for like brand new ground up Nintendo games.
Mhm.
So like we could be in for a scenario where we get an announcements for several of them, and all of a sudden we're like, whoa, what are all these ground up Nintendo games that all look amazing? And then all of a sudden Nintendo's like, yeah, so we also have this 4K capable system now, so you can see these games in beautiful 4K. Like,
Yeah.
timing wise, it might work out really well.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But continuing on the chat here, let's see what's going on. Quite a bit of conversation here. I'm glad you guys are all here. Let's see. Greg, what if the devs of Fast RMX Racing made you F-Zero? Just imagine. So I hear like this thinking a lot. Like, Shinen make pretty good like indie style games. The thing about Fast RMX, while it's beautiful, I just wonder, like, the gameplay style is very different from F-Zero, is my point. So I'm not saying they couldn't do it, right? Like, if they decided to make an F-Zero, obviously they would try to make it feel different, more like F-Zero. Maybe they could pull it off. Maybe Nintendo would hire them to do that. It would imply more of a smaller game. But, you know, ultimately, I don't need that much for F-Zero. I just need Grand Prix, you know, a lot of tracks and characters and vehicles. And if you look at Fast RMX, like, you know, if we consider the amount of, I don't remember the exact numbers, but I remember there was you know, a few Grand Prix and vehicles there. Like, if Shinen got hired by Nintendo to like make a bit more of an ambitious game, but not like, you know, like a AAA effort, like it could, you know, maybe double the numbers of that, and I'd be like, all right, hey, that's it, all right, that's fine. Like, yeah, maybe they could do it. But it definitely would have to be different than Fast.
Amazing looking F-Zero game for sure.
They're very good with their hardware. That's true.
Yeah, they like, even the Wii U version looks insane, and the Switch version looks so much better. It's crazy what they pulled off on both of those systems.
I think another thing that really separates a game like F-Zero from like Fast RMX and Wipeout is the great characters of the F-Zero series. Like, they have such interesting and unique racers and characters, and obviously Captain Falcon is such a star in the gaming community. You know, when you think of like games like Wipeout, it's like, who's your favorite driver? You know, who's your favorite character in Wipeout? You know?
Yeah, F-Zero has a lot of personality and lore. So that's kind of the part they would fear would be missing if they were to put if Shinnen were to do it. But again, if Nintendo were to let Shinnen do it, they probably would fund them. They might have a bigger team involved. So,
Right.
it probably would be a denser, more lore-filled game, and which also could entail a fair bit of personality, the personality we've come to love from F-Zero. So, it maybe. And to your point,
They
Brandon,
made
they are
The
good with hardware.
Tourist, and that game has a lot of personality to it.
Which one?
That game, The Tourist,
Oh, I didn't play it.
it's good. It's on Game Pass as well.
Is that like the kind of like 3D pix?
It's voxel based.
Yeah,
it's
voxel,
got
there we go.
squares, yeah.
The Tourist Game Pass.
Oh, that was
Shinnen
really
made
cool.
that.
Yeah.
Trying to just look up images real quick. Oh,
Came out on Switch first, and now it's on a lot of other platforms.
interesting. Yeah, those look pretty cool.
It's got a lot of personality to it.
I mean, it's a very interesting art style. I just don't know about the game itself. Is there like a story involved and stuff?
It's...
I haven't played it, so I don't know.
Yeah, you have to play it. I never beat it. I played through the first 2 levels.
Okay,
But there's a lot of It's not really a story-based game
sure.
as much as it's exploring and finding little secrets and
Okay, but are the
doing these,
characters
little mini
very
dungeons and
quirky
stuff.
and interesting?
A lot of it comes from the way they're animated, and they
Okay.
do talk. You can go up and talk to them, and
Okay.
they'll have different conversations and stuff.
Okay.
They just have little tidbits to say. There's just a lot of charm in the game, but obviously they're pretty small studio, so
Yeah,
it's not a huge game or anything.
I hear you. I mean, Shinnen's really good with their hardware, but I'm not sure if that they would be my first pick. But they are really good with what they do. Mackerel added me. How would you revive F-Zero? I would like to do survival horror where Captain Falcon has to go on bounty hunts that end with him having to chase the bounty as they escape certain doom. That's actually a really interesting idea. So it still has racing elements, but it's survival horror where you go on bounty hunts. Man, that's a very, very interesting idea. I guess with that, it would not really be a racing game anymore. They would have racing elements, but it wouldn't be a competitive racing game.
Like a Falcon spin-off.
Yeah. I mean, which I would also love. I think we kind of touched on it last time, right? It would be an ideal spin-off for sure. For me, how I would envision they would revive F-Zero. I mean, I'll be frank, it is tough, right? Because we haven't seen F-Zero perform really, really well. So what can Nintendo do to sort of have it do that? And maybe F-Zero is not going to be the franchise that's going to sell 10 plus million. Nintendo has a lot of franchises that don't sell 10 plus million, but they're still healthy franchises that have recurring entries. If they can get to sell 2 million, I think that would be a win. Xenoblade, Fire Emblem are around those numbers, and we talk about those games all the time. They're amazing. So maybe it could be more in the 2 to 4 million range, and I think that's fine. What does Nintendo do to kind of bring it back, though, for it to sort of make sense for them? I think it still has to be at the core F-Zero, so super fast, crazy drifts, crazy space tracks where you're looping and soaring, all of that's there. You got the intense, metal music and space music and things of that nature. All of that still got to kind of be there. You still got to have the characters. Got Grand Prix. You got to have online. That's got to be a thing. Maybe you can't have 30 racers online itself, but maybe you still do 4 with just computers or 8 with the rest computers. I think you definitely bring back Death Race. So if you don't know what Death Race is, it's a mode in F-Zero where you go onto a track and it's an endless race. Theoretically, the point of Death Race isn't to get to the end or be first, it's to be the last one surviving. So it's kind of actually almost like a battle royale, except it's on a track and there's 30 vehicles just going at each other as you race super fast. So bringing that back and having that be an online mode would be really cool. Actually, I think there's some fun to be had with an online Death Race mode. They've already played around with editable with being able to edit tracks and vehicles. I think you bring that back. But
Yep.
Going beyond that, what do you do? So I think they should have, you start the game off with at least like 3 Grand Prix available, or 2 if they want to start lower, and a small cast of characters and vehicles available. But to unlock more options for editing tracks and sharing them online and editing vehicles, and to open up more Grand Prix and characters, you have to go through the story mode. Pretty much the same as F-Zero GX, really. Like, it's not that different. But the difference is they do kind of explore more of that lore this time around. Maybe they do have like sort of like a smallish hub world you can explore, kind of like with Fire Emblem Three Houses with the monastery, except this time it's kind of like a space city. And there are bounty hunts and stories going on that lead you to different races and Grand Prix and missions as you kind of explore this environment. So it's an opportunity to kind of create more of a personality and a story. And there's still races within it, but if you just want to do the races and go online, you still have that option outside of the story mode, which is why they would start with some Grand Prix already available. I feel like that would be a really cool game. It'd be kind of it would be different with that story mode in that way, and with like the editing options with the tracks and the race tracks and the online sharing there. I think there's a lot, even like a battle royale death race mode, like all that there's a lot of potential, I think.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. Again, really leaning in strong to the interesting world and characters. They can do some cool hub stuff for sure. And then I think like one of the things that would be kind of simple for them to do was just really go all out with the tracks and try and innovate in that area. When I think of like some of the things Mario Kart has done to make each title feel unique, they've added things like the hang gliders to where you're like going off huge jumps that you can go underwater. They've done the hover carts now where the tracks twirl and go upside down. There's a lot of stuff like that, like tracks spinning and stuff and having steep drops that F-Zero already does. But I think if they can find some like innovative, never before seen in racing game ways to develop their tracks, that could be a really good push to get people excited, because then it's word of mouth, like, oh my gosh, have you played F-Zero? No, dude, the tracks are insane.
That's an interesting point, actually. Like, I want to kind of expand that on an idea, so because you got my brain thinking, right? Like, so yeah, pretty much most of the F-Zero tracks have like a very clearly defined track, but what if they kind of fuse the track with an environment more, because they're all taking place in alien worlds? What if you use this as an opportunity to fully design and show off weird exotic worlds? And the tracks, well, there's a lot that's very clearly designed and futuristic. Some of it breaks off and you race in environments as well. Like, imagine racing through an alien jungle and there's a few parts where there's like just like a giant troll weird monster that slams down. You have to kind of race through it. Like, there's different things they could do that kind of add a lot more variety to the tracks. That would be very cool, especially because they have so much material, because they could just do all sorts of random alien worlds.
Yep, alternate routes, secret passages. They can have random events happen. Maybe a heist breaks through the track and stuff. Like
point.
A crazy heist. You see like a helicopter, or not a helicopter, whatever the sci-fi.
And to that idea, like they could maybe pull from the lore of all the different characters. So some of these tracks tell stories, or at least are nods towards some of the background of these characters, which also might play well if there is like a story mode, kind of like we discussed as well.
Yeah. The potential is definitely there.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see here. Pretzels, do you think there will be one or two Nintendo Switch Directs this E3? More than one Direct? At
E3? Is that what he's saying?
I think there's a small possibility there could be like a partner Direct before E3. Maybe. Like, if that's what you mean, like, I think there could be like a partner, like a small partner showcase that shows off some third-party games. That way they get a little bit of focus there. And then at E3, it's more Nintendo-focused and big third-party game stuff as well thrown in there. Like, I could see that. But I would only put that partner showcase as a maybe. I feel like we're so close already. At this point, you don't really do it. Although partner showcases, they can be kind of dropped whenever. So like maybe next week they announce their E3 plans. The week after that, they have a partner showcase mini, shows a few other smaller things, and like 3 weeks after that, we actually get E3. Like, yeah, that maybe that could happen, but I'm just expecting one big direct right now, but definitely a chance of a partner showcase a few weeks before.
Yeah, same here. Or like if they decide to do one of those like little mini directs that's just about one title that they want to talk about.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, because the partner showcases would always like reveal like one third-party game or another. Maybe you could use one of those partner showcases to kind of bring back Shin Megami Tensei 5, talk about that. But I feel like there's a good chance they're just going to talk about that at E3.
Sure, yeah.
Tayrol added me. Do you all think any type of Nintendo presentation will happen this week? Mini partner showcase game-specific direct. I think this upcoming week we may see Nintendo announce their E3 plans. So by the end of the week, Nintendo may announce. It may happen the week after, but I feel like we're pretty close to when Nintendo will actually make the announcement of what they want to do for E3.
Yeah, we're almost a month away now from the show, so it's about time.
So info. Exactly. So, but in other words, I'm not necessarily expecting a presentation. I'm expecting an announcement of a presentation.
Yeah. However, presentations are always welcome, Nintendo. So.
Indeed they are. Maybe because we did talk about earlier how maybe Nintendo might do something a little different this year. Maybe they're going to open up like a Breath of the Wild 2 website that we can kind of explore and get hints from, right? So there might be something fun for us. I think there's going to be something fun for us potentially shown off this month. Samus Hunter was alluding to it on Twitter earlier today that there's going to be some Zelda things shown off throughout the month apparently. Probably Age of Calamity DLC. But maybe something else, maybe a teaser for Breath of the Wild 2 or an announcement of some sort of eShop release or other Zelda remaster or a Skyward Sword update as you brought up earlier, Cameron. So, there could be something. Another thing to note is that I forgot to mention this. Like, I do think there's going to be like a Pokemon Presents before E3. I think they're going to use that time to talk about Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl in more detail. They may give us an update on Legends Arceus as well. So, yeah, I think there will be a Pokemon Presents before E3. So I guess my answer to the earlier question from Pretzels is that I do think there will be another direct, but it might not even be branded as a direct because Pokemon Company the last couple of years has started sort of marking them as presents instead.
Right.
Let's see here. Oh, Knuckleheads come sort of adding on our idea in terms of F-Zero tracks. They could have a cameo Metroid track and a cameo Star Fox Universe track. Yeah, why not? It makes sense for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, I am all for bleeding in some of the other series into F-Zero. They obviously did it with Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, bringing in a Zelda track and an Animal Crossing track and an F-Zero track, and it was really cool. They're some of my favorite tracks in the game just because they're so fun.
They're very cool. Yeah, I love those tracks. Absolutely. But I feel like we're pretty much done with the podcast already. Do you guys have any final thoughts or things you want to talk about before we call it a night, guys?
I think we covered it.
Yeah, I guess I think there's a lot to be excited for when it comes to Nintendo for the rest of the year. Based on what we're hearing, it sounds like they have some pretty big plans. What they are, we're all going to find out sooner than later. So,
yeah, for sure. I do think we're signs are pointing towards an exciting year.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. Is there anything else you guys want to shout out with your social media or your YouTube channels or anything like that?
Yeah, I released the song that I've been working on for a long time. It's up on my channel. It's a rock instrumental if you want to check it out. First song I've ever done. Don't be too harsh. It was made in GarageBand on my phone using the free version. And I've never taken a music course in my life other than learning the piano for a bit. So it's all new to me, but I released something that I thought was actually pretty good. So
I thought it was interesting. For your first song, I found it to be like, if you go into it with the perspective of it kind of like trying to have a message, I think it could it's a bit of a trip. So I think it's worth at least looking at for sure.
Hell yeah, dude! I'll check that out.
Yeah,
it's awesome that you got that out.
Thanks.
Yeah, if you guys want to check me out, you could find me at GameBird Classic. I'm a Nintendo channel like Andres. I cover Nintendo news. I do, speculation and rumors, and an occasional unboxing. And we have a lot of fun on my channel. So definitely check that out. I'm also on Twitter and Instagram if you want to find me there.
Yep, and both their channels are linked in the description below, guys. Make sure to check them out. But with that, maybe leave us a like. We will, stay tuned. The content is coming throughout the week. It's going to be an exciting time. There's more rumors and news that are continually coming out as we go into E3. So, yeah, this hype train is not stopping anytime soon. It's gonna be going for sure. But all right, guys, have a good one. Take care. Bye.
Bye, guys.